なぜそこまで麦わらを信じる。
D はまた必ず嵐を呼ぶ。
いや、セカンド
三刀流クローンサガジョイボーイ。
お前らを超えて海賊王になる男だ。
Meanwhile, on Mock Town on the same island, Bellamy and Sarquis are having an unexpected fight against one another. The reason behind the fight is the unexpected return of their true leader, 7 warlords of the sea member Donquiyue da Flamingo, feeling upset that his symbol was being used in shame to fight against foolish dreams, such as the existence of a city of gold in the sky. Although Bellamy begs for forgiveness and states he will never shame the sign ever again, Doflamingo still uses his powers to have Sarquis attack him. As Bellamy screams, Doflamingo touts the beginning of a new age where only worthy pirates exist and the trash are abandoned. Elsewhere, the Straw Hat Pirates have a successful landing back in the blue sea as the octopus balloon shrinks down to a smaller size upon landing. Everyone on the crew believes as if a dream has ended, and that maybe someday they would return to Skypia once again. But before they can speak for too long, a massive tsunami approaches the ship with bizarre faces of sea monkeys staring right at them, forcing them to move going merry out of the way. Checking out their merchandise they brought from Skypia, they discover Nami's waiver as well as nearly all collected dials except the cloud dial work in the blue sea. However, Nami is more interested in the distribution of the gold collected from their journey, claiming 80% of all profits even as the rest of the crew ask for various things themselves. But even with what they want, they all soon realize what they need due to all the damage the Mary took on their journey. They need some place where they could fix it. Though they know Usopp had been protecting it since leaving Syrup Village, he considers himself a sniper and thus not worthy of keeping up all maintenance, thus allowing Luffy to make an intelligent decision. The next crewmate will be a shipwright to protect and maintain their home, followed by a musician. The Straw Hat Pirates are sailing away from Salvage King Masira pirate crew, sea monkeys and the tidal wave following them. Usopp, looking out through a pair of binoculars, spots a ship up ahead, believing it to be an enemy ship. As they draw closer to the enemy ship, Luffy tries to warn them about the upcoming tidal wave by asking them to turn around. Many of the pirates on the enemy ship are seen fighting, arguing with each other since they know navigator, flag, sails, or captain. The Going Merry is able to safely get away shortly after the tidal wave disappears, leaving them with a smooth sail. Luffy, Usopp ask Robin, who is keeping watch, if she has seen an island. Robin replies, telling them she's seen an island a while ago, but there's fog ahead. Luffy, Usopp tell Robin alert them next she sees an island. Nami asks Chopper to watch the front. The rest of the crew discuss the ship they passed. After discuss what they saw, the Going Merry heads for shore on Long Ring Long Land. Luffy, Usopp, Chopper are the first to step foot on the island and are surprised by the tall animals inhabiting the island. Usopp locates a small house within range distance through his goggles. Outside the house they spot a tall white horse with a saddle on her. Luffy then points to large pieces of bamboo. As he gets closer, he gets hit by the moving bamboo. Luffy reacts by attacking the bamboo with a Gomu Gomu whip. Chopper talks to the tall white horse, asking where his master was, the replies not knowing where his master has gone. Chopper then proceeds to rush over to Luffy after he attacked the bamboo. Much to everyone's surprise, there an old man laying on the ground from Luffy's attack on bamboo. The Foxy Pirates land on Long Ring Long Land and prepare to attack the Straw Hats. The old man, who was knocked down before, awakens and sees Usopp, Chopper, and Luffy beside him. He greets them and asks if they are well, and when the 3 pirates say that they do not know him, the man introduces himself as a nomad named Tonjit. He thanks them for helping him get off of his abnormally lengthy stilt. After being questioned, he says that he wanted to make the world's tallest stilt due to his fascination for them, and says he was stuck for 10 years, causing Luffy to call him very stupid. Tonjit says that the bamboo stilt he made never stopped growing, and that he managed to survive by eating fruit off the trees. He then explains how all the animals on the island are able to have such lengthy bodies, pointing out several examples with some animals. Tonjit goes inside his house to look for milk and suddenly realizes that his village is gone, as with their cattle. Tonjit gets some stored milk, which has spoiled into cheese, and when none of the Straw Hats decide to eat it, Tonjit does, and he gains food poisoning as a result. Afterwards, Tonjit explains more about his tribe and about Long Ring Long Land. Usopp mentions that with the currents around the island, it will take Tonjit 20 more years to go around and finally reunite with his nomadic tribe. Tonjit says that with his horse it can only take 5 years. He then explains to Luffy that he does not know any sailing, so even with a ship, he cannot reunite with his tribe any sooner than he can with a horse. Tonjit then sees his horse Shelly outside and hugs the animal, grateful that it was able to stay loyal and wait for him so long. He then decides to go ride Shelly across the plains while Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper look on. Tonjit says that he and Shelly will be able to cross the land bridge when the tide subsides, regardless of the weather when it happens. Shelly starts thinking back on how stubbornly it waited for Tonjit to return, ignoring what his tribe was telling her. Now reunited, Shelly suddenly leaps into the air for happiness. A gunshot is fired and Shelly is struck down, causing her master to fall off. He and the Straw Hats rush over, worried for her safety. Luffy looks around and sees a shadowed group nearby and angrily asks who they are. They are members of the Foxy Pirates, Captain Foxy, and Pirates Porsche and Hamburg. Luffy threatens to defeat them, and their captain starts feeling upset, as Luffy does not recognize who he is, though quickly he regains his self-confidence and introduces himself. Luffy charges at him but stops when they recognize him and his crew. Suddenly, Foxy challenges Luffy to a Davy Back Fight, and Luffy readily accepts. Usopp thinks about what the Davy Back Fight is and remembers the incident with the missing crew from earlier. As he remembers, Usopp screams for Luffy not to accept the match because if they lose, they'll also lose their friends. As Foxy traps Luffy into agreeing to fight him in the Davy Back Fight, Usopp argues against it but is told that since Luffy accepted the challenge, with Porsche as a witness, it will take place. Asking if he wants to back out and admit he is not a man, Luffy denies but points out what happened to Shelly. Tonjit prepares to shoot but Luffy frantically tells him not to while Chopper is in the process of removing the bullet. Meanwhile, the other Straw Hats are told about the Davy Back Fight proposal by the other members of the Foxy Pirates. Zoro believes the proposal to be a waste of time since they would fight without one, but Sanji reveals that the fight is more of a gamble. Robin goes on to explain that the game was created to help pirates acquire crews from others. Nami is shocked to hear this, at which point the Foxy Pirates explain that in the game, there are 3 rounds and the victor of each round may pick someone from the loser's crew. That person then has to swear loyalty to the captain of the winning crew. But the winning captain may also choose to take the loser's pirate flag. The Straw Hats then assume the pirate crew they saw earlier must have lost the game. The Foxy Pirates confirm this. Nami says this is meaningless and foolish and that they refuse to play the game, but the Foxy Pirates remind her that if the captain agrees to fight, it does not matter what the crew thinks. Despite her crewmates telling her such is the way it is, Nami argues against the challenge, suggesting that being called cowards is no big deal. Both Zoro and Sanji state that it is. Though she wishes to stop Luffy, she is told that it will be too late as they expect the guns to fire soon. When the sounds are heard, everyone knows that the challenge has been accepted. Usopp continues to get angry at Luffy, who proclaims that he will beat Foxy, whom he then insults. Soon, the initiation ceremony is set to begin as Luffy and Chopper marvel over the size of Foxy's crew. The rules are explained to everyone, and once the captains swear to abide by them, the game begins. Foxy then reports Davy Jones that the game commenced by throwing a coin into the sea. Chopper then asks Robin who Davy Jones is. Robin answers that Davy Jones was a cursed pirate in the ancient times that lives under the sea and steals everything that lands on the seafloor. While Foxy ponders which of the Straw Hats to take once he wins, the Straw Hats then divide themselves over the 3 rounds. The first round, the donut race, commences with Usopp, Robin, and Nami participating for the Straw Hat Pirates and Porsche, Capote, and Manga participating for the Foxy Pirates. The winner will be greeted by a celebration and the loser by the cold sea. It's the Davy Fight Back rules have been explained. The first round, the donut race, is about to begin. The objective is announced. It's very simple. Just go around the island once. Gun, cannon, swords. Any weapon is allowed. Foxy comments on uses the rules to his advantage. Nami is eager to start. Robin points out if the opposing team's ship breaks, they'll win. Both teams are given an eternal pose in case they get lost. The race begins. But as the race starts, Nami's team receives heavy gunfire from the Foxy Pirates from within the audience. Their small boat, Barrel Tiger, is sent flying from the explosion of gunfire. Once it lands, a huge boulder is seen falling from above them. Usopp rows just fast enough to get away. Robin comments, saying help from crew members works both ways. Sanji takes his anger out on several Foxy Pirates crew members for attacking Nami and Robin. Capote uses Sea Splitter Fishman Karate to slow down and throw Nami's team off balance. Usopp responds firing certain Deathfire Star but turns out to be ineffective. Robin then restrains him with 8-wheel Fluer until flipping him over onto Manga. Luffy, Sanji, and Chopper cheer on their crewmates after finishing beating up some more of Foxy's crew. Foxy talks with Hamburg, saying the newbies are getting better. Usopp is seen arguing with Nami Robin about catching up with the cutie wagon. After some arguing among themselves, Tiger Barrel is seen moving forward past Porsche and Capote at an extreme speed. Once returning to a normal speed, Usopp reveals he used an impact dial to give the boat a speed boost. Manga charges forward to catch up, and a chain of hands created by Robin are seen holding onto the front of their boat. The hands then grasp Capote and pull him into the water, breaking the front of their boat in the process. Nami urges Usopp to use the impact dial again as it is the only way to win the race. Both Porch and Capote are not happy with events since Nami and Co. Past them, Porch plans to sink the Barrel Tiger. Just up ahead lies everyone's biggest challenge, Long Coral Area, Long Whirlpool, and Long Cape. Foxy is seen riding Hamburg on the shoreline, stating he has a very naughty idea. As the donut race continues, the cutie wagon Porch, Capote Manda makes its way into one of the race's more well-known challenges, the Long Coral Area. The Taru Tiger, occupied by Nami, Usopp, and Nico Robin, is hot on their heels with Usopp and Nami rowing. Commenting on the sun's heat adding to the challenges, Itamamizu flies overhead. Portia and Capote note that they need to make up for the time that they lost earlier in the race, while Nami, Usopp, and Robin notice that the giant coral's effect on sea currents will likely prompt them to proceed with caution. Itamamizu calls attention to Foxy and Hamburg running along the shoreline, hinting that they are planning something for the race. Foxy tells Hamburg to get ahead of the competitors. Meanwhile, Luffy, still eager for a fight with the Foxy Pirates due to their subterfuge in the donut race, is approached by their chef with an offer of food. Luffy seems almost helpless against the offer, as he drools excessively over the dishes in front him. Sanji receives the adulation of multiple women of the Foxy Pirates, while Chopper is similarly distracted with the sweets they offer him. Zoro has already been excessively drinking rum with multiple Foxy Pirates, to the point that they need to fetch him more. The race takes an unexpected turn as Nami decides to slow down before entering the Long Coral Area, despite the cutie wagon speeding ahead of them. This confounds Usopp, but Nami's strategy is soon justified as Manda is shown to be incapable of pulling the cutie wagon through the coral area's intense currents. Nami decides it is now time for the Taru Tiger to make its move, but as they proceed, Robin notices a thick smoke filling the coral area. Itamamizu comments on Foxy's underhandedness, while also pointing out that Taru Tiger now risks running into something every time they move. Foxy begins to revel in the success of his dastardly deed, but this is quickly cut short as he notices the Taru Tiger pass completely through the smoke with no issue. Now effortlessly speeding through the long coral area, Usopp points out that the boat is moving on its own. Nami explains that the area is a maze of sea currents, where a giant whirlpool behind the corals is actually causing a chain of smaller whirlpools in the area. With this being the case, all she had to do was determine the correct path to enter the area, and the smoke would be inconsequential. Usopp praises Nami's skills as a navigator, but Itamamizu reminds everyone of the giant whirlpool that is still up ahead. Nami tells Usopp that they will need his impact dial again to prevent being swallowed by the whirlpool, impressing Usopp further at his navigator's calm demeanor and foresight. Usopp complies, and the Taru Tiger is catapulted completely over the giant whirlpool, as well as a small strip of land, landing safely on the other side. Itamamizu is astounded at their success, wondering if this will mean a loss for the cutie wagon. Not to be counted out, the cutie wagon improvises by having Capote get partially inside of Manda's mouth in order to improve their speed and maneuverability. They begin shattering the giant corals with brute force, quickly closing the gap between them and the Taru Tiger. As the Taru Tiger begins moving forward again, they notice a sign in front of them that tells them to turn right. Nami feigns following the instruction, only to immediately destroy the sign as they continue moving forward. Foxy is once again fooled, this being boss trick 18, fake sign attack. Itamamizu comments on Nami's untrusting nature, earning himself a direct insult from her. Itamamizu also notes Nami's profane comments before announcing that they are moving into the next challenge, the Long Ripple. This area is characterized by giant pillars of water shooting up from the sea. Foxy tries more deceitful tactics, pretending to be a feeble old woman in need of help as Hamburg cries over him. Nami simply ignores him, telling him to stop his tricks, with Itamamizu now calling her heartless and cruel. Usopp notices the finish line ahead of them, however Nami destroys it as they pass through, noticing that it is once again a trick by Foxy. Foxy is absolutely beside himself at Nami's perception of his trickery. Robin states that the real finish line must be close, and Usopp informs her and Nami that he won't be able to use the impact dial again. Itamamizu again questions Nami if she believes anything she sees, earning himself more insults from her. The cutie wagon has stopped at the fake finish line, believing it to be real. Nami states that she wouldn't be able to live with herself if she loses to idiots like the Foxy Pirates, and reminds Usopp and Robin that they will lose a crewmate should this come to pass. As the cutie wagon finally realizes their mistake, Itamamizu announces that they are approaching the long bamboo shore. Nami notices that she can see the real finish line, but also that they won't be able to best the quickly approaching cutie wagon in speed. Pointing out the bamboo trees in the distance, Nami asks Usopp to shoot some of them down. Porch commands Capote and Manda to speed up and destroy the Taru Tiger, but the falling bamboo trees critically injure Capote. In retaliation, Porch unveils her cutie baton and flings several rose-shaped shuriken at the Taru Tiger. With the Straw Hats unable to dodge, the shurikens punch several holes in the Taru Tiger. However, the Straw Hats are close enough to the finish line that they believe they can still make it by charging through. Along the shoreline, Foxy has Hamburg get closer to the Straw Hats, and the cutie wagon pushes forward with just Monda swimming once again. As the race reaches its highly anticipated conclusion, Luffy, Chopper, and Sanji cheer on their crewmates. The Foxy Pirates along the shoreline praise the Straw Hats for their efforts, but assure them that they won't be winning despite how things look for them. In response to Luffy's befuddlement, one of the Foxy Pirates explains that their captain has a devil fruit, just like Luffy. Foxy then fires his Noro Noro beam at the Taru Tiger as it approaches the finish line. Round 1 of the Davy Back Fight, the donut race, has ended with Porch's team winning against the Straw Hats. Due to Foxy's crew win, Foxy gets to choose a Straw Hat to join the crew. The Straw Hats talk about the loss, and Foxy later reveals that he used an ability form his devil fruit, Noro Photon, against the Straw Hats. Foxy tries to explain the Noro Photon, but Luffy does not listen and chases Foxy away by calling him stupid. Foxy explains again, saying that he ate the Noro Noro no Mai and thus became a Noro Noro man and that anything that touches it will slow down. He demonstrates his powers at an incoming cannonball, but when the cannonball comes, it explodes at Foxy's face. The Straw Hats say that that was a dirty trick to use during a race, but Portia rebuts the statement, saying that crossing that line is what that matters and that the fact that they did it first, the Straw Hats lost. So Foxy ends the game, saying that game has ended and that the winner is his team. Foxy gets to choose a crew member from the Straw Hats. In the end, he chooses the doctor of the Straw Hat Pirates, Chopper. Foxy says that Chopper will make a great pet and told Chopper to swear his loyalty by putting on the mask. The Straw Hats are saddened by the loss of Chopper, but Zoro scolds Chopper, saying that he is disgraceful, and it was Chopper who chose to get onto the sea. Even if dead or alive, it was his choice, and that the Straw Hats accepted the challenge and did their best. Zoro then tells Chopper to quietly sit down and watch the game if he is a man. As the Straw Hats prepare for round 2, Foxy's crew cheers, saying that Zoro sure can talk. As Chopper was going to be in the second round, but he is not with the Straw Hats, the Foxy Pirates also have the match in the bag. Itamamizu then explains the rules of the Groggy Ring. Zoro nominates Sanji to be the ball, and Sanji gets angry, asking why Zoro got to decide. So, the music of the returning champions of the Groggy Ring starts. The returning champions have gone undefeated in the past, and they are called the Groggy Monsters. The Groggy Monsters make their debut, and the second round of the Davy Back Fight has begun. Itamamizu introduces that Sanji and Zoro as the official participants for the Straw Hat team. The Groggy Monsters mock and laugh at the Straw Hat team, expecting more. The Groggy Monsters choose ball position first and attempt to place Sanji, the ball, into the goal. Sanji objects to being the ball and Zoro responds with a compliment, saying Sanji looks handsome, which annoys Sanji even more. On the sidelines, the other Straw Hats are cheering on Sanji and Zoro. Foxy laughs at the Straw Hats, saying his team is unbeatable. Luffy insults Foxy by calling him two-piece head and Foxy falls to his hands and knees, depressed. After Porsche helps Foxy recover from his mental breakdown, Foxy brags that he won't even have to assist the Groggy Monsters win. Nami complains that interference is allowed in all the events of the Davy Back Fight. Foxy also points out the Straw Hat team, Zoro and Sanji, seem to have no team spirit. Nami is about to defend them when she looks to the field and sees them arguing and gives up on her defense effort. Nami yells to Sanji that he looks awesome wearing the ball hat, and hearing the compliment, Sanji finally accepts the position of ball. With the game about to start, a member of the Foxy Pirates yells to Zoro and informs him that weapons are not allowed in the Groggy Ring, and Zoro removes them, saying he won't need them. Pickles, the tackle demon, starts the match by charging Sanji with a sling tackle, but Sanji jumps over Pickles and avoids the attack. Sanji goes to attack Big Pan but loses balance on Big Pan's slippery skin. Itamamizu explains that Big Pan is a fishman giant with mudfish genes, which causes his slippery skin. When Sanji is distracted, trying to run up Big Pan's skin, Big Pan performs his punk pass, which sends Sanji flying across the field. Iceberg and Zoro both try to catch Sanji, the ball, but Pickles come out of nowhere with a swipe tackle and pushes Zoro out of the way, leaving Hamburg to catch the ball. Hamburg then throws Sanji farther down the field to Pickles, who has again knocked down Zoro, this time with a spinning tackle. Big Pan charges forward and bounces Hamburg into the air, who catches Sanji in mid-air. Hamburg is about to score a slam dunk, but Zoro intercepts by throwing Pickles toward Hamburg. Sanji also gets a hold of Hamburg and is able to throw him as well, and Hamburg and Pickles collide into each other and are knocked out. Itamamizu is shocked that Zoro and Sanji managed to throw Pickles and Hamburg out of the ring, but the two Straw Hats are arguing once again, saying they do not need the other's help. The Foxy Pirates are shocked at these turn of events, and Portia says that she will not forgive Hamburg if he loses. The game is still going on even though Pickles and Hamburg are incapacitated, and the Straw Hats get angry at Zoro and Sanji for arguing instead of putting the unguarded Big Pan into the ring. Big Pan then tries to stomp Zoro and Sanji, causing them to run away, to Usopp's chagrin. However, Zoro tells Usopp that Big Pan has knives on the soles of his boots, and Sanji reports the rule violation to the referee. However, the referee is purposefully looking away as Foxy says that he cannot see everything, and Sanji kicks the referee in anger. The referee maintains that he saw nothing and gives Sanji a yellow card. One more violation from him will result in a red card and him being ejected from the game. Sanji is angry at the biased call but gets back into the game, only to see Big Pan attacking Zoro with a giant axe. He also reports this to the referee, but he turns his head away again, angering Sanji once more. However, Usopp and Nami convince him to not do anything to get ejected, and they are also forced to stop Luffy from attacking the referee himself. However, Zoro and Sanji resume where they left off as they continue running away from Big Pan, but they stop and prepare to counterattack, though still refusing to fully cooperate with each other. Sanji knows that to avoid Big Pan's slippery skin, he must attack him in his clothed areas, but Big Pan flops onto his belly and slides forward, causing Zoro and Sanji to land on his back and slip down it. Big Pan then pulls his legs up to his head from behind, forming a loop that Zoro and Sanji are trapped sliding in. As Zoro and Sanji continue sliding, Pickles and Hamburg return, now carrying weapons, which the referee does not see due to performing some stretching exercises. Big Pan unrolls himself and sends the disoriented Zoro and Sanji flying into the air, and Pickles and Hamburg prepare to unleash another combo attack on them. Pickles sends Hamburg spinning into the air, and Hamburg slams Zoro into the ground with his elbow guard. Big Pan then gets into spiking position as Hamburg holds his elbow guards downward like a blade, and Big Pan sends Hamburg flying straight into Zoro. Hamburg's elbow guards drive into Zoro's abdomen, severely injuring him, and Itamimizu says the game is over for Zoro since he is dead. The groggy monsters then prepare another attack as Pickles gets into Big Pan's mouth and is shot out at the disoriented Sanji like a cannonball, his spiked shoulder pads primed. Pickles' attack sends Sanji flying into the air, and Hamburg smacks Sanji through the air, although he does not seem to be heading for the goal. Sanji hits Pickles' shoulder pad, and Big Pan finishes him off with a spike into the ground. The Foxy Pirates cheer and the Straw Hats are despairing as all that is left for the Foxy Pirates is to put the downed Sanji into the ring. However, Zoro and Sanji are still conscious, and they agree to help each other for 10 seconds. Tony Chopper looks on in deep anxiety as it appears that the second round of the Davy Back Fight, the Groggy Ring, will end with the Straw Hats losing once more. Flying overhead, Itamimizu begins preparing to call the match in favor of the Foxy Pirates, but they are completely blown away as Roronoa, Zoro, and Sanji rise back to their feet. Itamimizu praises their endurance, while Luffy and Usopp cheer on their crewmates. Foxy commands Hamburg, Pickles, and Big Pan to give him a monster burger, which draws appalled reactions from the Foxy Pirates. Hamburg pulls out 2 metal clubs, and Pickles draws his swords, as the Foxy Pirates begin singing a song of the ingredients for a burger. Nami points out that such weapons are not allowed to no avail, as Big Pan pulls out 2 huge pans that he can smash together like cymbals. As the 3 of them move in on Zoro and Sanji, Itamimizu announces that it is the crew's most deadly combo attack and, ironically, red card material. The referee is stretching along the sideline, intentionally averting his gaze elsewhere from the illegal activity. Luffy attempts to attack the referee for his bias but is held back by Usopp. Itamimizu notes that their target is the ball Sanji, with Hamburg leading the assault. Sanji states that he can't make anything good out of third-rate ingredients like the Foxy Pirates, and launches himself towards Hamburg with several backflips that cause the latter to note his speed. Sanji uses Troisième Hachis, delivering several powerful kicks to Hamburg's face before also launching him in the air with another powerful kick, Bouquetier shot. Hamburg flies right by Pickles towards Big Pan, causing him great concern. Pickles tells Big Pan to stop smashing the pans together, but it is too late and Hamburg gets crushed completely flat between them. Seeking revenge, Pickles attempts to cut Sanji but is stopped by Zoro with his bare hands, who reminds him that this is a team battle. Pickles then tries to focus on Zoro, but he uses no sword-style Tatsumaki and sends Pickles flying straight at Big Pan as well. Noting that he is unable to stop his spinning motion with his swords due to Zoro's attack using the rotation against him, Pickles inadvertently cuts up Big Pan. The attack incapacitates Big Pan and knocks him back, but Sanji appears behind him and kicks the Wotan back upright again with an anti-manner kick course. Zoro begins to rush towards Sanji, though Itamimizu announces that he is going for their ball. Big Pan, which prompts Pickles to attempt to stop him. Sanji quickly intervenes, however, landing a kick so powerful on Pickles that he flies straight into the referee. The referee is severely injured, but remains conscious enough to note that the Straw Hat's behavior was intentional. He attempts to raise a red card, only to notice that they have been stolen from him before he fully passes out. Nami reveals that she has stolen all the cards, and Robin calls her a naughty girl for doing so. Zoro rushes Sanji and jumps on his leg, causing Mizu to mistakenly announce that they are fighting each other once again. Sanji instead uses his leg to launch Zoro directly at Big Pan. Zoro grabs the Big Pan by the lip and lifts his body into the air, astounding the Foxy Pirates with his strength. The crew is in utter shock that the groggy monsters could ever be defeated. Zoro slams Big Pan's head through the goal, winning the second round of the Davy Back Fight for the Straw Hat Pirates. And with Sanji and Roronoa Zoro having scored the game-winning goal, Usopp and Luffy cheer on their crewmates. Chopper cries profusely from happiness, extremely impressed from their efforts. Even the Foxy Pirates are blown away, though Foxy quickly admonishes them for cheering for the enemy. While Foxy ponders how something like this could have happened, the referee finally awakens. Nami reminds him he needs to blow his whistle, and he gladly obliges, remembering how Sanji kicked Pickles into him. He is stunned as Mizu notes his whistle as the official ending of the match, unaware that the groggy monsters have been defeated. Usopp repeatedly hits Zoro in his happiness, drawing the latter's ire, while Sanji seeks the adulation of Nami and Robin. Mizu reminds everyone that with the Straw Hats winning round 2 of the Davy Back Fight, their captain now gets to choose someone from Foxy's side to join his crew. With no deliberation, Luffy says he'll choose him, prompting several of the Foxy Pirates to wonder if he means them. Before Luffy is able to say Chopper, however, Nami reminds Luffy that he has the option of choosing the opposing captain. This would get them a 3rd win and Chopper back, without having to fight. This enrages several of the Foxy Pirates into throwing insults at Nami, including Mizu himself. This draws Sanji's anger, as Mizu expounds on how dishonorable it would be. Nami cries into Robin's arms as she brings up the multiple times the Foxy Pirates have disobeyed the rules, but this is short-lived as the Foxy Pirates continue to hurl insults. Nami tells them they are making her angry, prompting them to immediately cease and apologize. Mizu clarifies that it is Luffy's choice, again causing some of the Foxy Pirates to believe he is choosing them. Robin tells Luffy that if he does choose Foxy, it would indeed give them an easy win, but she doesn't want someone like Foxy traveling with them. Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and Usopp concur that they don't want that kind of trash on their ship, which visibly breaks Foxy's spirit. With that said, Luffy calls Chopper back over to their side. Luffy tells him to stop crying, as there is no way Zoro and Sanji would have lost. Foxy goes into another depression at Luffy's choice, but his crew perks him up as they tell him to teach the Straw Hats a lesson in round 3 of the fight. Foxy feels extremely endeared to his crew for their kind words, but Sanji kills the mood as he angrily tells him to start the fight already. Foxy responds by issuing a threat to the Straw Hats, stating that they don't get back the crew member they lose in the final round, so they should all be prepared to become Foxy Pirates soon. Luffy interjects that he won't lose to Foxy, who cryptically states that there are many differences between a normal battle and a game battle as he walks off. The episode begins with the Straw Hats recovering from the intense second round, where they barely managed to win, securing Chopper back from Foxy's crew. However, the crew knows they can't relax just yet. The 3rd round promises to be even more challenging. The roller race involves racing around a circular track on roller skates, where each team must navigate obstacles, traps, and of course, Foxy's underhanded tricks. Luffy, the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, steps up to participate in this round, determined to secure another victory for his crew. He is joined by Zoro, Sanji, and Nami, who also want to prove their skills in this unusual race. Foxy, on the other hand, is eager to regain the upper hand and sets his sights on Luffy, hoping to slow him down with his devil fruit ability, the Noro Noro no Mai, which allows him to slow down his opponent's movements. As the race begins, Luffy and his crew quickly realize that this won't be a simple competition. Foxy employs every trick in the book, including using his powers to slow down Luffy and Zoro, causing them to crash into obstacles and lose their momentum. Meanwhile, Nami and Sanji do their best to outmaneuver Foxy's crew, relying on their agility and quick thinking. The race takes a wild turn when the track itself starts to change, with sections collapsing and new obstacles appearing out of nowhere. Luffy, despite being slowed down, refuses to give up and uses his creativity to find alternative routes and ways to bypass Foxy's traps. Foxy attempts one final trick, using his Noro Noro no Mai to create a massive slowdown field around Luffy. However, Luffy, driven by his determination to protect his crew, pushes through the slowed-down space with sheer willpower. In a dramatic final push, Luffy manages to break free from the slowdown and crosses the finish line just ahead of Foxy, securing the victory for the Straw Hats. With this win, the The Straw Hat Pirates emerge victorious in the third round of the Davy Back Fight, the battle round, which begins with choosing a ring. To do so, the two captains spin a cannon, with the fight location being where it naturally stops. When the cannon immediately stops on the Foxy Pirates ship, however, Usopp is livid that the motion of the cannon wasn't very natural at all. A cannonball is launched at the ship, with the fighting arena being determined as the 50-meter radius around the landing location. The arena thus includes the entirety of the ship, as well as some of the surrounding water. All weapons on the ship are valid for use in the fight, however, no one other than the contestants may enter the arena. To win, one must simply knock the opponent out of the arena. After explaining the rules, Itamimizu announces a cheerleading show led by Porsche on the fight stage, as well as a sale on several souvenirs, much to Nami's annoyance. As Chopper patches up Zoro and Sanji's injuries, he thanks the two for winning him back. Sanji gets into a dispute with one of the Foxy Pirates over the taste of the popcorn, but he quickly turns his attention to the fireworks that signify the beginning of the third round. Sanji finds seats for Nami and Robin, and Chopper notices the sky fill with a dark smoke. In the smoke are two enlarged versions of Luffy and Foxy's bounty posters, as Itamimizu states that the final round will be a bout between the two. Itamimizu announces Foxy's entry into the ring, noting that he has 920 straight wins. As Luffy is announced, he has a brief flashback of Usopp coaching him on his appearance for the fight. After removing his cloak, it is revealed that Luffy is wearing an afro and a flaming skull and crossbones tattoo across his midsection. Usopp is wearing the straw hat underneath his goggles. Chopper and Sanji cheer for Luffy, but Zoro does not recognize his captain with the afro. Both contestants have entered the arena for the final round of the Davy Back Fight, the battle round. On Luffy's side, Usopp is proud of his role as coach, warning his opponent about the power of Luffy's punch, while Luffy himself is anxious to start the fight. On Foxy's side, he cracks his neck and compliments Luffy for his battle-ready appearance. In the stands, Zoro wonders how Usopp became the coach, while Sanji and Chopper enthusiastically cheer for their captain. Nami, on the other hand, wonders if Luffy actually takes anything seriously, though Robin is very amused at her captain's new appearance. Usopp begins issuing another warning to Foxy, though he is cut off as Itamimizu announces that it is time for all non-contestants to exit the ring. Itamimizu takes this time to reiterate the rules of the battle round. The entirety of the Sexy Foxy is part of the arena, including the rooms below deck, as well as everything within a 100-meter radius of the ship's mast. Additionally, the battle round has no time limit. It ends when a contestant scores 1 point, knocking the opponent out of the arena. The audience stand rises up, both to give the audience a better view of the fight, but also so that only the contestants remain in the terrain of the arena. Foxy repeats to Luffy that the entirety of the ship is in play, and he may fight as he pleases without worry of breaking anything. As Luffy acknowledges, both crews cheer on their contestants, with Nami reminding Luffy to watch out for his opponent's Noro beam. Itamimizu sets the stage, once more announcing the fight, and it finally begins upon the ringing of a bell. Luffy immediately attempts a Gomu no pistol, but Foxy uses his Noro beam on Luffy's fist, allowing him to easily dodge. Luffy is shocked that his fist has become slow and won't return to him, while Foxy explains that the effect is worse with the more effort that Luffy exerts. Luffy falls down as he reels from the effects, only for Foxy to prepare another beam. Still unable to move his arm, Luffy attempts to dodge by jumping in the air. Foxy simply redirects the beam, however, catching Luffy mid-air and upside down. The Straw Hats are unsettled by this new development, most notably Zoro, who points out that the beams are reducing the speed of Luffy's actions. Still unsure of what's going on, Luffy questions Foxy's actions, though his speech pattern is extremely slowed as well. Foxy unleashes the Foxy Rush, a barrage of punches on Luffy's face. Sanji notes that punches are having no effect, but Zoro points out that the effects are probably being slowed down as well. Foxy confirms this and states that Luffy is done for even if he is a rubber man. Foxy announces that 30 seconds have gone by, and Luffy's body is immediately rocked from the impact of the flurry of punches as he goes flying. Sanji makes a note of the 30-second rule, while Chopper panics that Luffy's body will fall into the sea at this rate. Luffy is able to catch his fall by extending his arm to grab the ship, surprising many of the Foxy Pirates with his Devil Fruit ability. Luffy states that the Noro beam is stronger than he anticipated and resolves not to stretch himself too much for easy retaliation. He runs further onto the ship looking for Foxy, but arrows suddenly fly towards him that he barely manages to dodge. Luffy spots Foxy floating toward him on a cannonball and notes that he must have used the Noro beam on it to do so. Because of this, Luffy believes that he can jump on the cannonballs as well, but the Noro effect wears off on the one he chooses. He catches a different cannonball to break his fall, but the same thing happens, causing Luffy to crash into the deck of the ship. As Luffy rises to his feet, Foxy uses another weapon, the Foxy Face Bomb, and it shoots miniature versions of Foxy's head at Luffy. Luffy wonders why they resemble the souvenir pins he bought, and one of the heads responds that they are bombs. As Luffy ponders why the bombs can talk, one of the heads is revealed to be Foxy himself, who lands a hard punch to Luffy's face. Foxy reveals that he has exchanged his boxing gloves for spiked ones, and also that the 30 seconds for the Foxy Face Bombs are now up. Luffy is caught in a powerful explosion, prompting Nami to show concern for her captain. Mimizu notes that all the bombs landed direct hits and says that Foxy is winning the fight. Mimizu and Chuchun are stunned that Luffy is still alive crouched on top of a mast. Everyone later hears Foxy's laughter coming from a shadow in the smoke. Foxy tries to attack Luffy by using his Noro Noro beam, but instead Luffy sneaks behind him and uses Gomu Gomu hook. Luffy threatens Foxy to break his hands, which makes Foxy run back to the smoke. Luffy thinks he sees Foxy and punches it, but instead it was actually a fake made from cardboard. Behind Luffy, Foxy uses Noro Noro beam again, which Luffy dodges. He turns around to see many of the fake Foxy. Foxy asks where will his beam shoot next. Luffy responds by asking how is he supposed to find him if all the targets have the same ugly haircut. He then finds Foxy upset, kneeling on the ground with his head down, and punches him in the face. Foxy hits a wall with his face, gets back up and tricks Luffy by distracting him, saying that there is a three-headed monkey. While Luffy is looking up at the sky, Foxy pulls a lever making Luffy fall into a secret room. In the secret room, the floors are moving and Luffy tries run in the opposite direction of the moving floors, but he cannot and falls out of the sexy Foxy. He uses his Gomu Gomu no My power to stretch his arm to get him back on the ship. The onlookers continue rooting for Luffy to win against Foxy. Meanwhile on the ship, Foxy continues to hide. Luffy sees an open door to another room. Nami calls out to Luffy that it is another trap, but he continues to charge at it without a second thought. Usopp cheers on for Luffy and is hit in the head by Sanji. Inside the sexy Foxy, Luffy enters a cannon room and sees a door being slammed. Foxy hides in a room full of blades but is next to the door. Luffy uses a cannon, shoots it at the side that Foxy is on, causing him to Foxy gets angry at Luffy for using one of his cannons and punches him. Foxy then runs away, hides in the infirmary, and disguises himself. Luffy chases after him to only find Foxy disguised as a female nurse, which he does not recognize and asks if they had seen Foxy. After he walks out of the infirmary, he realizes that Foxy's disguise looks much like him and believes that it is his sister instead. Luffy re-enters the infirmary and is attacked by Foxy's counter, Fox Blow. Foxy runs away again but to the kitchen. Luffy finds him again but he is disguised as a male chef, and Luffy asks if Foxy had seen a stupid Foxy guy with his head split in two. Foxy is later in pain from Luffy's insults, which makes Luffy finally realize that Foxy was always in a disguise. Foxy later admits that he was also the nurse in the infirmary. He then slows Luffy by using Noro Noro beam again and attacks him with Nine-Tail Rush. While Luffy slowly experiences the attacks, Foxy walks to a lever and pulls it, only reveal another room. He tells Luffy that something horrible awaits him on the other side of the door. Luffy, still under the effect of the Noro Noro beam, slowly starts propelling out of the kitchen. Foxy exclaims that 30 seconds have finally passed and the effect of the Noro Noro beam wears off, hurling Luffy and making him fall into a dark room. Luffy gets up and wonders where Foxy went. Suddenly, Foxy appears on top of a machine known as the Gorilla Puncher 13. Foxy activates the machine and slowly starts to head towards Luffy. He follows through with a Noro Noro beam that misses Luffy, making the latter confused as to why the former would purposely miss. Foxy tells Luffy to turn around. Luffy notices a mirror behind him and was shocked to learn from Foxy that the Noro Noro beam could be reflected by mirrors. After dodging the Noro Noro beam, Foxy presses a button on the Gorilla Puncher and hits Luffy with one of the boxing gloves, severely burning the pirate. Far from finished, Foxy pulls out his mirror racket and sends multiple Noro Noro beams at Luffy. Foxy taunts Luffy, exclaiming that he will never be able to get close to him while dodging both the punches and the Noro Noro beams. Immediately afterwards, Luffy turns around and smashes the mirror behind him. Foxy ironically says that it was a cheap move on Luffy's part. He then loses sight of him and gets surprised by a Gomu Gomu no pistol to the back. Foxy tries to retaliate with another Noro Noro beam, but Luffy dodges it. Luffy falls and hangs on to the Gorilla Puncher 13. Foxy calls him a fool and attacks Luffy with Gorilla Puncher Golden Hit, badly burning him in the process. Back outside, Mimizu commentates on the match while riding Chuchun. The Straw Hat crew cheers Luffy on, knowing that he will come through for them. Suddenly, an explosion occurs on the ship. Foxy emerges from the smoke in triumph while Luffy is seen lying face down on the ground. The Straw Hats are shocked to see Luffy injured, questioning how he got burned by mere punches. Luffy gets back up once more to face Foxy. Foxy gets annoyed. He pulls out his Noro Noro beam sword and restrains Luffy's arm and legs. He then follows up with a Megaton 9-tail rush attack. Luffy gets pushed back, but he gets back up once again. Foxy repeats the same combo, but Luffy gets back on his feet yet again. Foxy is stunned by this. Luffy yells that he will fight to the death in order to save his friend. Itamamizu comments on how strong Luffy is as he managed to get back up repeatedly over and over again. The Straw Hats cheer onto Luffy, telling him no to give up. Foxy, however, is not impressed by Luffy and asks why Luffy just would not stay down. Itamamizu tells everyone about Luffy's conditions as Luffy keeps standing up for the sake of his friends. He shouts to everyone, saying that that is the true spirit of the Davy Back Fight. Itamamizu starts to cry and could not see anything as he was touched by Luffy's actions. Everyone, except for Foxy and his crew, cries out to Luffy. Foxy's crew cheers onto Luffy. Itamamizu mentions that Luffy was the first and only man who could survive against Foxy to this extent. When Foxy finds out that his crew are cheering for Luffy, he scolds them and tells them to cheer for him instead. The crew follow his orders and cheer for him. He tells Luffy to watch out as his battle is going to be the end. After finishing his message, Foxy fires a Noro beam sword at Luffy. Luffy tries to run but is caught by the beam. Foxy mentioned that in the state of Luffy's, it is impossible to run from him and his beams. Following that, Foxy prepares for his finishing attack. Doing his finishing attack, Foxy first slows down the cannonball with a Noro beam. Next, he rides on the Foxy fighter and tells Luffy that using the speed of the cannonball, the fighter will defeat Luffy for sure. Soon, Foxy shows his ultimate attack and prepares to charge and obliterate the target. Sanji tells Luffy to get up earlier than the glider and run as fast as he can when he is free. While Foxy is charging at Luffy, Luffy manages to get free from the effects of the beam first. Foxy, however, says that it is useless and Luffy will not get away from it. Luffy does not manage to escape in time, and Foxy successfully hits Luffy. Usopp and Chopper warn Luffy of the incoming danger by the Foxy fighter. Luffy, however, could not move. Foxy tells Luffy that it is his farewell gift to Luffy, and let the fighter crash onto Luffy. With that, he says that the game is over. The Straw Hats are shocked that Luffy is defeated and would not survive from the attack. However, Luffy manages to come up. Foxy's crew are shocked that Luffy keeps standing up, and that some says that he is not even human. Luffy tells Foxy that he will be the winner. However, Foxy says that that is rubbish as Luffy could not even fight back. He also says that if Luffy wants to die that badly, he will keep hitting Luffy till Luffy drops. Foxy proceeds by using Megaton 9-tail on Luffy. Luffy attacks back by using Gomu Gatling gun on Foxy. Itamamizu mentions that the fight is still so fierce even that late in the game, and the fighters have entered a pummeling rage. Usopp and Chopper tells Luffy to beat Foxy up for good, and Itamamizu says that the game is not stopping anytime soon. In the middle of the fight, as both parties get tired, Foxy tries to use a Noro beam on Luffy. Suddenly, they both do not move. Itamamizu says that Luffy is down but is shocked that he is still moving. Foxy is confused about the situation and asks what happened. It is revealed that Luffy has a piece of mirror in his hand. Luffy tells Foxy that it got stuck on his afro when he was in Foxy's room. Foxy is shocked about the fact, and Luffy prepares to finish Foxy by using Gomu flail on Foxy. Foxy is struck by the attack. He, being unable to move within 10 seconds, has finally lost the competition and is sent flying back by Luffy. Itamamizu shockingly announces that his boss has been sent flying into the sky. The rest of the Foxy Pirates are surprised too. Foxy then lands in the sea and loses the third round of the Davy Back Fight, thus ending his 920 win streak. Itamamizu declares Luffy as the winner. The Straw Hats celebrate their captain's victory. Meanwhile, the Foxy Pirates rush to save Foxy as their captain continues to sink into the sea. The Straw Hats rush to Luffy's side. Usopp continuously pokes Luffy out of joy for his victory, which causes Chopper to yell at him because he's poking the captain too hard and asks if he's trying to kill him. Sanji and Nami make a passing comment about how Luffy's afro supposedly made their captain strong. Luffy then suddenly wakes up and asks his crew whether or not he has won the Davy Back Fight. Zoro tells him to relax and assures him that he won. Luffy lies with his head back down on the ground in relief. The rest of the crew is relieved as well. Foxy then appears and comments that Luffy has ruined his record. He extends his hand and tells him not to feel bad. Luffy extends his hand as well, which causes Portia and Hamburg to chuckle. All of a sudden, Foxy grabs Luffy's arm and attempts to do an overhead throw, but fails because Luffy's arm just stretches thanks to his Gomu no My abilities. Foxy gives up and yells to get the whole thing over with. Itamamizu declares that Luffy gets to choose a new crew member from the Foxy Pirates since he was the victor. Luffy doesn't choose any crew members, but instead he chooses to take the Foxy Pirates flag, which surprises them. Sanji yells at Luffy, telling him that he should pick Gina instead. Luffy refuses, which relives Nami. Foxy calls Luffy evil for robbing them of their pride. Luffy responds by saying that he just wants the flag, not the sail, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to leave. This causes the Foxy Pirates to call Luffy thoughtful until they realize that their Jolly Roger is in their sail as well and yell at Luffy, because they think that he's only pretending to be nice to them. Luffy then tells them that he will erase the Jolly Roger on their sail and give them a new one. This causes Foxy to say that he is so nice. Luffy finishes the new Jolly Roger, but the Foxy Pirates are depressed by it because it was horribly designed. Luffy mistakes their depression for happiness and thinks they're so grateful despite them saying otherwise. Meanwhile, Portia chases Chopper. Usopp is happy about the fact that the Going Merry is free again. The Foxy Pirates depart on the Sexy Foxy, with their captain declaring that he will get revenge on the Straw Hats one day. Afterwards, the Straw Hats go to check up on Tonjit and Shelly. Luffy happily announces to the two that they defeated the Foxy Pirates, which causes them to smile. Chopper then tends to Shelly's injuries. Nami offers to give Tonjit and Shelly a ride on the Going Merry so that the two can reunite with their clan. However, Usopp says that the 10 islands are actually the same, and that they can't use the log pose to point to them individually. The man wakes up, asking who they are, a sentiment the Straw Hats mutually share. However, they notice Robin has fallen to the ground with a terrified expression upon seeing him. Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy grow concerned and prepare themselves for battle. The man turns out to be one of 3 Marine admirals, Admiral Aokiji. He comments that Robin has grown into a fine woman. Noting Nico Robin's terrified expression at the man towering before them, Luffy asks his crewmate if she knows him. Aokiji states that they have met once before. The crew braces for battle, as Nami wonders who exactly this man is to frighten Robin to such an extent. Aokiji tells the crew to relax, as he is not here on any orders and was just going for a walk. Zoro makes note of Aokiji's reference to orders, causing him to inquire who exactly he works for. Robin answers him, telling the crew that the man standing before them is a Marine Admiral. Sanji is noticeably shaken by the information, recognizing admirals as the highest power of the Marines. Robin confirms this, noting that there are only 3 people in the Marines who hold this rank: Akainu the red dog, Aokiji the blue pheasant, and Kizaru the yellow monkey. Furthermore, the only person above these 3 is the Commander-in-Chief Sengoku. Aokiji is thus one of the 3 men considered to be the ultimate assault force of the world government. This absolutely horrifies Usopp, who cowers behind Zoro while he demands the Admiral chase down other pirate crews with higher bounties. Aokiji doesn't pay attention to this, instead flirting with Nami, which infuriates Sanji and Usopp. Aokiji attempts to calm them down, reminding the crew that he is only here for a walk, but he loses his train of thought, angering Sanji and Usopp further at his lack of coherence. Usopp asks Robin if she's sure someone like him could hold such a high position in the Marines, causing Aokiji to state not to judge him by his appearance. He announces that he upholds the motto of lazy justice, which Sanji and Usopp do not object in the slightest. Aokiji states that it is time to rest due to his legs being tired from standing, prompting the crew to ask him why he was sleeping standing up in the first place. Aokiji again reminds the crew that he is not here to arrest them, instead assuring them that he only wanted to confirm Nico Robin's whereabouts after the Arabasta incident. Sanji and Usopp make more offhand comments about the man before them not being very admiral-like, as Aokiji states that he is only going to report the discovery so that the bounty for the crew can be recalculated. He attempts to do the calculation himself, but gives in saying he is too lazy to count, which confuses Zoro. Luffy attempts to attack the admiral, saying he won't let him take Robin, but he is held back by Usopp, who doesn't want his captain starting an unnecessary fight with someone allegedly so powerful. Aokiji again reminds the crew that he isn't here to fight, but Luffy isn't fazed his claim, still seeking combat. Luffy eventually tells the admiral to leave. Aokiji intends to comply, but states that he overheard Tonjit's wishes during his light slumber. He tells Tonjit to pack his things and get ready to move, but Luffy tells him not to listen to the mysterious man, since he is a Marine. Tonjit questions why he shouldn't listen, causing Luffy to remember that as a pirate, he is usually considered the bad guy, while the opposite is true for the Marines. Usopp smacks Luffy on the head for his cluelessness, who perks up after he realizes that Aokiji truly wants to help Tonjit. Aokiji reveals that he heard of Tonjit's plan to ride Shelly across the low tide to the 3rd island from their current location. Usopp reminds the admiral, however, that this is currently not possible due to the horse being injured. Aokiji states that it will be fine, though Usopp notes that he doesn't seem convincing at all. Robin speaks up and confirms that he can help, however, which grabs the crew's attention. After packing his things, Tonjit, Shelly, and everyone else goes to the coastline. Aokiji says that it feels good to work out once in a while, which causes Luffy to agree and note that Aokiji is really a nice person. This isn't lost on Nami, who points out how Aokiji and Luffy all of a sudden seem like friends. Tonjit thanks the crew for their help by offering them cheese again, drawing Usopp's ire. Luffy asks Aokiji what his plan is now, who responds by having everyone stand back as he places his hand in the water. A Sea King suddenly emerges from the water to attack Aokiji, alarming the crew. Aokiji is not fazed at all, and uses Ice Age. The entire ocean before them is instantly frozen solid, including the Sea King itself. As the crew stands in disbelief at the sheer power of the Admiral, Robin reveals that Aokiji has eaten a Logia-class devil fruit, the Hai no Mai. Aokiji tells Tonjit that his technique should hold for about a week, so he can take his time crossing but should wear more clothing due to the cold. Tonjit can't believe his eyes and is absolutely overjoyed that he will be able to reunite with his friends after 10 long years. Tonjit and Luffy thank the Admiral for his help. Tonjit then bids farewell to the crew, again thanking them for their help as Chopper reminds Sherry to change its bandages. After the Straw Hats see Tonjit off, they make their way back up the coast in Aokiji's direction. Aokiji suddenly sits up from his prone position, causing Luffy to note his change in demeanor. He explains to Luffy that he is a lot like his grandfather. The mentioning of Luffy's grandfather quite noticeably shakes him, to the point that Usopp asks why he's suddenly sweating so much. Before Luffy can articulate his concern, however, Aokiji mentions that he dealt with Luffy's grandfather a long time ago. While only here to see Robin, he states that maybe the Straw Hats should just die now. Admiral Aokiji informs the Straw Hats that while the world government is currently not taking them very seriously, he has analyzed them and assessed that they are a group of very determined individuals. Even though there is only a handful of them, the trouble that the Straw Hats have managed to cause have led Aokiji to believe that they will become a serious threat. He notes that the Straw Hats have grown at an extraordinary rate in the small time since Luffy acquired his first bounty, and though they have only fought other pirates up until now, he is concerned at what the future holds should they decide to pursue other quarry. Usopp wonders what is prompting all of this given that Aokiji was just out for a walk, and Aokiji adds that the Straw Hats are now especially dangerous with the addition of Nico Robin. This fires up Luffy for combat, who is now fully convinced that the Admiral is here to take his crewmate away. Aokiji ignores this as well, continuing to speak directly to Robin. He clarifies that a bounty is not only a reflection of the threat that one poses in combat, but also an indication of just how dangerous you are to the world government. Aokiji calls attention to the fact that Robin received a very high bounty despite only being 8 years old, and has survived all these years by betraying her partners and using them as tools. With that being said, he directly asks Robin if the Straw Hats are her new tools for achieving her goals. Sanji is incensed at the attacks on Robin's character, questioning the Admiral on just what Robin did to him. Aokiji states that she has escaped from his custody before after he arrested her, but that is a story that the Straw Hats will learn soon enough. He continues by pointing out that every group that Robin has ever associated with has ended up completely annihilated, with her as the sole survivor. This further angers Luffy, who states that the past doesn't matter. This causes Aokiji to point out that Robin has already gained the group's trust, at which point Robin has had enough. She asks the Admiral just what he's trying to do as she seizes his body with Train to Flora's 30 flowers, sprouting arms to grab him by the limbs and neck. Usopp freaks out that Robin would do this to an Admiral, while Aokiji himself casually laments that he thought Robin would be smarter than this. As Robin uses Clutch to break his back and neck, Aokiji collapses into a pile of ice on the ground. Chopper and Usopp react frantically, with Chopper thinking he is actually dead, and Usopp wanting the group to run immediately. Aokiji slowly reforms himself from the ice, much to Usopp's dismay. He grabs a handful of grass, tosses it aside, and blows cold air at the pieces to freeze it into a sword. Aokiji attempts to slice Robin, but Zoro blocks the attack. Sanji follows this up with a kick to disarm the Admiral, while Luffy prepares an attack as well. However, Aokiji grabs Sanji's leg and Zoro's arm, just before Luffy manages to land a Gomu Gomu no bullet to the Admiral's stomach. The blow doesn't move the Admiral at all, instead Luffy's arm is frozen from the contact with his body, as he proceeds to freeze Sanji's leg and Zoro's arm. Nami notes that the Admiral took down all 3 of their strongest members with one move, as they all collapse in pain. Chopper states that they need to be treated immediately, or they will never heal properly. Aokiji tells Robin that she's found some good friends this time, but she's still herself. Robin tells the Admiral he is wrong, but before she can finish her sentence, he puts his arms around her and freezes her solid. Luffy is absolutely infuriated at the Admiral's actions, however Aokiji tells him that Robin will live as long as she is thawed properly. He notes at the same time, however, that her body is very brittle, and if she breaks apart, she will die. Aokiji then attempts to smash Robin with his fist, though he prefaces it as if he is giving a hypothetical demonstration. Luffy arrives barely in time to move Robin, but they are still right by Aokiji, so he attempts to follow up with a stomp to destroy her body. This time Usopp arrives at the last second to move Robin out of harm's way, leading to Luffy being stepped on. Luffy rolls away from Aokiji and tells Chopper and Usopp to get Robin back to the ship immediately to thaw. Aokiji tells the crew not to bother saving a woman like Robin. Nami attempts to hit the Admiral with her climate attack, stating that the pirate world is filled with women like Robin. Aokiji questions just how much Nami knows this pirate world, before casually swatting her aside. This springs Zoro and Sanji into action once again, but Luffy stops them both, telling them that he wants to fight the Admiral alone. Luffy then asks Aokiji to settle the matter man to man. Aokiji agrees, but warns Luffy that the fight will be to the death. On the ship, Chopper and Usopp work frantically to revive Robin through her frozen body. However, their efforts are slow to produce results, with Chopper afraid for her fate. Hearing his lack of certainty, Usopp gets scared and argues with him about being the only one who can save her, but Chopper retorts that he's never dealt with such a situation before. Continuously splashing water on her, Robin slowly begins to thaw just as Chopper hears voices calling him. Outside the ship, Zoro, Sanji, and Nami have returned, but without Luffy. Upon questioning this, Chopper is told that they will go back for him, but their bodies need to be thawed first. Upon being told that Robin is already in the bathroom, Nami asks if she is alright, but Chopper remains uncertain. Suddenly, Zoro and Sanji jump into the sea, hoping it will help them. Nami is told to assist with thawing Robin and goes to do so. Before long, Zoro and Sanji are asked by Usopp about Luffy, then revealing that he wanted to fight Admiral Aokiji alone. Angered, Usopp confronts the two of them and nearly brawls with Sanji before Zoro breaks them apart, telling them they need to prepare for the worst. Out on the battlefield, a heavily frozen Luffy pants heavily in the presence of the Marine Admiral. Rushing beneath him, Luffy manages to kick the massive man into the air and use Gomu Gomu no Storm. However, Aokiji soon comes down and freezes Luffy on contact with Ice Time, ending the battle. Seeing the frozen Luffy, Aokiji remembers agreeing to a one-on-one fight, and thus would be breaking his word if he went after any of the other Straw Hats. Briefly wondering whether Luffy thought he could win the fight, Aokiji prepares to leave, telling him that he will soon experience the misfortune that Robin brings wherever she goes. Telling him that though he could break him, he owes him a favor due to him helping in the fight against Crocodile, Aokiji calls it even, disregarding Smoker's message. Soon after, Sanji and Zoro arrive to find Luffy still in one piece and take him back to the ship. Looking at his map, Aokiji finds that the next city on it is Water 7, noting that they are getting closer to headquarters. Back on the ship, Chopper tells everyone that Robin and Luffy's hearts are beating again. As they cheer, Chopper stops them from going further, telling them they still need to rest. Nami states that with them in such a condition, they should remain where they are for the day, though the log is ready. Zoro notices Usopp and asks what is wrong with him, to which the sniper asks if they will meet more such people soon. Meanwhile, in her bed, Robin awakens. Robin is reading late at night while the others are sleeping. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appears in the ocean and plays an instrument resembling a seahorse. Nami wakes up in the morning but cannot recognize Robin. Chopper, Usopp, Sanji, and Luffy also wake up soon after, all of which are confused as to why they woke up on the ship their memories were erased. Usopp lies and says that he was a famous pirate, but his lie is seen through. The Straw Hats all meet at the deck and notice Chopper, wondering who he is. Robin explains that they were on the Grand Line, and that they were on a pirate ship led by Luffy. Nami then goes to her room and finds her logbook, finding that the notes were written in her handwriting. Nami decides that she must return to Kokoyasi village. She escapes the ship using a waiver. Zoro also decides to leave and jumps in the water and swims. Meanwhile, the mysterious figure watches from a hill. Robin informs the Straw Hats about the memories erased from them. Meanwhile, Nami, who left the ship, arrives on a nearby island. A newspaper is dropped from a seagull, and all the residents in the village fight each other over the newspaper. Nami then meets the boy who erased the Straw Hats' memories. He tells her to ride around the island. Robin then explains what happened the night they lost their memories. They deduce that only those who fell asleep lost their memories, and that the child stole their memories by playing the low-pitched horn. Luffy figures that although their old memories had been lost, they would just make new memories through their adventures. A flashback is shown of Zoro, telling Quina that either one of them will become the world's strongest swordsman. Quina's father tells Zoro that Quina's dream has been passed to him, giving him the Wado Ichimonji. Back in present day, the boy approaches Zoro, but is noticed. Meanwhile, Nami, who is bathing, wonders how the Straw Hats ended up as her nakama. She also wonders what happened to her Arlong Pirates tattoo, having forgotten the events of the Arlong Park arc. A flashback is shown of Nami joining the Arlong Pirates. Back to present day, the boy stands on the ship's figurehead and blows the horn. Robin confronts him, waking up all the Straw Hats in the process. Angry, the boy attempts to blow into his horn a sleeping spell, but is confronted by Luffy for sitting on the figurehead. The horn emits a blue, sparkling dust that flows into Luffy's mouth. The boy escapes, but when Luffy wakes up, he regains his memory. Nami, who is in the town's inn, questions what Robin said. She realizes that she has to return to Kokoyasi village, but is unsure how to go from the Grand Line back to East Blue. Back on the ship, Luffy, having regained his memory, explains that he is the captain. Luffy sets out to find Zoro and Nami. Robin suggests waiting until morning, to which Luffy agrees. In the forest, the boy tries to approach Zoro again. However, the boy decides not to and leaves. 3 flashbacks are shown, one of Sanji talking to Zeph on the deserted island, one of Usopp telling tall tales to Kaya, and one of Chopper being taken in and raised by Dr. Hireluk. In the morning, the Straw Hat Pirates set out to find Zoro and Nami. To reach the island, they each build a canoe, but Usopp's canoe is used. Meanwhile, Nami checks out of her inn, only to find that the innkeeper's memories have been erased. Usopp also has trouble talking with the villagers due to all their memories being erased. Luffy finds Nami and catches her. The Straw Hats explain to Nami that the boy stole their memories. They deduce that they need to find the boy to reclaim their memories and get Zoro back. Meanwhile, the boy finally approaches Zoro in the forest. The boy casts a spell on Zoro. The Straw Hats then go to a deserted area where Robin reads from a stone. She says that the real thief was not the boy and tells the Straw Hats to head to the palace of the sea god. The Straw Hats travel through the forest to find the palace of the sea god. Usopp and Chopper are chased by a snake. After losing the snake, they become separated from the others. They also run into Zoro, who awkwardly ignores them. However, when Zoro finally sees Luffy, he attacks Luffy using his swords. The Straw Hats believe that Zoro was hypnotized. Luffy tells the others to go ahead to the temple, while he stayed behind to battle Zoro. Zoro defeats Luffy with an onigiri move. Meanwhile, on the way to the palace, Nami tells the Straw Hats that Luffy and Robin are lying to them, and that they should go home. However, the Straw Hats decide to stay with Robin and they leave Nami behind. Nami, however, decides to follow the Straw Hats to reclaim her gold. Back in the forest, Zoro and Luffy continue to engage in the fight. Upon arriving at the palace, Robin explains that there is a legendary monster that would feed on others' memories to survive, and that the monster resided in the island. Nami and Usopp try to reach the Straw Hats, but are approached by the cloaked boy. Sanji leaps into the air and kicks the boy, causing the seahorse horn to release the Straw Hats' memories, and also play a sound. Because the boy was briefly unconscious from the kick, he lost his memories. The boy, confused as to where he was, flees. Robin explains that the real thief was the seahorse horn. It tries to flee, but is caught by Sanji. Sanji beats the seahorse until it coughed up the Straw Hats' memories. Having regained their memories, they wonder if Zoro has regained his memories. Zoro approaches them and Sanji is prepared to fight him. The seahorse communicates via Chopper that it still had its last resort. The villagers celebrate because they regained their memories. The cloaked boy, who fled from the battle, reunites with his mother. He tells the villagers that the memory thief was in the forest. In the forest, Zoro approaches the Straw Hats, prepared to fight them. Sanji battles Zoro, but Luffy launches himself forward, hitting Zoro and Sanji. When they wake up, Zoro reveals that he regained his memory when the seahorse coughed up his memory. Sanji was mad that Zoro still looked scary after regaining his memory. Zoro then jumps into the lake to chase the seahorse. After Zoro catches it, the seahorse uses his last resort. He sprays a gas into the air that makes the Straw Hats hallucinate people from their past memories: Bellamy, Hireluk, Kaya, Quina, Zeph, Ace, and Shanks. Then their past enemies are Long, Wapel, Kuro, Krieg, Crocodile, and Enel. The seahorse then steals the Straw Hat's memories, causing it to inflate and be able to float. It becomes a Senenryu. Luffy launches himself into the air and wraps around the seahorse. The seahorse, in pain, releases Luffy's memories. Luffy, who regained his memories for the second time, defeats the seahorse, causing him to release all his remaining memories and fly into the air. The Straw Hats then ask for a reward from the villagers for defeating the seahorse and giving them their memories back. However, the villagers, mistaking them to be the memory thieves, attack the Straw Hats. The Straw Hats were forced to escape empty-handed on the waiver. On the sea, Sanji prepares dinner. Luffy explains that the reason Luffy did not show up at the same time as Zoro was because he was stuck under a boulder. Luffy soon finds Yokozuna, that frog that the shipwreck survivors from the previous island told them about, that was able to swim with a crawl stroke instead of a normal frog swimming motion. He insists on following it, manually changing course and paddling the Going Merry to Nami's chagrin, hoping to catch and eat the frog. Suddenly, they find themselves near a lighthouse, and by what looks like a railroad crossbuck, with the lights and bells going off. As a train whistle sounds, something approaches them very fast, causing Nami to order full reverse in a panic.
Tracks underwater, and were nearly run over by a train traveling on top of the water, and the frog was sent flying by it. They were amazed by this sight. On a nearby station, they met with the station master named Kokoro and her granddaughter Chimney, along with her pet rabbit, who acts like a cat Gombe. After revealing that the frog Yokozuna was perfectly fine and that it was always testing its strength against the train, Kokoro explained that the train was a sea train that connects several of the nearby islands and is called the Puffing Tom. She then told them that the log pose would lead them to Water 7, a city of shipwrights where they could fix their ship, and told them to get help from a man named Iceberg. The crew arrived at the city, which resembled a fountain, and sailed through the canals in the city looking for a place to dock, but the people were kind enough to tell them where to hide their boat. After stopping, a group of Luffy, Nami, and Usopp headed out to exchange their gold from Skypiea and find a shipwright using creatures called Yagaras to navigate the canals. Robin encounters CP9. Later, Robin and Chopper left to look around, and Sanji went by himself to do the same, leaving Zoro on the ship. While Chopper was in a bookstore, a masked man walked past Robin and simply said CP9, which left her in shock. When Chopper came out, Robin was gone. Meanwhile, several bounty hunters came on to the Going Merry to claim the bounty on the crew, but they underestimated Zoro's power and were quickly defeated. Luffy's group managed to exchange the gold for 300 million, and they went to dock one of the galley law company. There they met Kaku, one of the foremen, who revealed that Iceberg was the mayor of Water 7 and the president of galley law. Kaku did not know where Iceberg was, so he decided to inspect their ship in the meantime, using immense speed and leaping capabilities to rocket across the city. Just after Kaku left, Iceberg and his secretary, Khalifa, introduced themselves to the three, and he agreed to work on their ship. However, as they were about to enter the dock, the crew found that all of their money was gone, and they saw it being taken by several people. Luckily, at that moment, another foreman, Polly, was running from tax collectors and knocked the robbers off of their Yagara bulls, but was about to use the money to pay his debt before another foreman, Rob Lucci, stopped him. Iceberg revealed that the thieves were known as the Frankie family, a gang of dismantlers that bounty hunt and steal on the side, and were led by a powerful man named Frankie. Meanwhile, Sanji saw Robin with the masked man from before, but when they turned the corner, he found that they were gone. He later met up with Chopper, and they started looking for Robin. Meanwhile, in Dock 1, while Usopp was separated from the group, he was attacked by the Frankie family and the 200 million he had was taken. Kaku returned from his inspection of the ship and revealed a startling fact. The Going Merry was impossible to fix. Since the keel was broken, trying to fix it would be no different from making a new ship entirely. Though Luffy complained about this, Iceberg told him to think about it for a while. The empty suitcases containing the money Usopp carried were found, and they concluded the Frankie family was the cause, so Luffy rushed off aimlessly into the city while Nami headed back to the ship after finding out about the location of their headquarters from the galley lay workers. On the way, however, Nami found Usopp bloody and battered on the street, and he deeply regretted letting them take the money. She left him there for now so she could get everyone else, and explained the situation to the others, including Sanji and Chopper, who had returned to the ship. At the Frankie house, the dismantler's headquarters, the stolen money was presented to Frankie himself, who revealed that the amount would be enough to buy what they had always wanted and left his gang a bunch of money to party with. As he was about to leave, the door exploded as Usopp walked in demanding that he give the money back. After a failed attempt to attack Frankie, the others ganged up on Usopp. The other Straw Hats went to where Nami left Usopp, but all they could find was bloody footsteps as Luffy fell from the sky. After he explained that he was trying to leap across the city like Kaku, he was told the situation. Outside of the Frankie house, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper found Usopp even worse off than before. The four battled the Frankie family, destroying the building, but they found that Frankie had already left with most of the money. At this point, Luffy decided to abandon the Going Merry and buy a new ship. At the Going Merry, Usopp's wounds are treated, and the news is broken to him that they will change ships. At first, Usopp thinks they are joking, but when it's confirmed to be true, he asks if it is because he lost the money. But Luffy insists that the money would not have made any difference, and the ship can no longer sail. Usopp gets angry and insists that the Going Merry is just as much of a crewmate as everyone else, yelling that Luffy would trust strangers he met just that day and abandon a friend that was with them from the beginning. So he insists that he thought long and hard to make the decision, and that if Usopp does not like the way he captains, then he should just leave. Sanji manages to get Luffy to calm down and the captain apologizes for what he said. But Usopp says those were his true feelings and states that if they are going to abandon Merry, they'll have to leave him behind too. As Usopp leaves the ship, with everyone else looking on tearfully, he turns around and challenges Luffy to a duel over control of the ship at Tensero that night. On the ship, Nami tries to convince Luffy to resolve the matter with words. But Luffy points out that Usopp is not the type to arbitrarily put his life on the line for things he did not strongly believe in. Once he issued the challenge, there was no turning back. Meanwhile, Sanji yells at Zoro for letting the Frankie family escape after they attacked him, because if they did not steal the money from Usopp, none of this would have happened, but Nami gets them to calm down. True to his word, at 10 o'clock that night, Usopp came back to the ship for his duel. The fight begins and Usopp mostly uses his weaker attacks like the Shinsen, Tamago Boshe, and Usopp spell, but then it turns out these were simply to set up for several brand new attacks. Usopp reveals that his strategy is to not even give Luffy a chance to attack and manages to get in several damaging hits in. After being hit by a humongous explosion caused by shooting a Kaienbashi into a cloud of explosive gas stored in a breath dial, Luffy charges towards Usopp while doing his Gomu Gomu no Bazooka attack, but Usopp absorbs the blow into his impact dial. Then hits Luffy with the full force of his own attack, thinking he won. But Luffy manages to land on his feet and brings Usopp down with a Gomu Gomu no bullet. Despite being the winner, Luffy lets Usopp have the Going Merry and has the rest of the crew leave the ship. The next morning, the entire city is in a frenzy with news that Iceberg was shot. Upon hearing this at the hotel they are staying in, Luffy and Nami decided to see the mayor while the others keep looking for Robin. At the ruins of Frankie House, Frankie returns and concludes that the Straw Hats were behind this. As it turns out, the other Frankie family members were hoping their boss would want to avenge them and were keeping tabs on the pirates. They tell Frankie that Luffy is heading for Dock 1. Meanwhile, Iceberg manages to wake up and identify his attackers. One was a large man wearing a mask, while the other was Nico Robin of the Straw Hat Pirates. At the same time, it is announced around the town that Aqua Laguna, an annual high tide that engulfs the lower part of the city, is coming, so Kokoro, Chimney, and her rabbit come to Water 7. At Dock 1, Frankie attacks Luffy with a flame attack, leading the two pirates to believe he's a devil fruit user until he jumps straight into the canal and attacks from there. After trading several more attacks, Frankie reveals that he's a cyborg, a human with robotic parts, before the fight can go on for much longer. However, the galley lay foremen intervene. At first, Luffy and Nami think they are helping fend off Frankie, but then they start attacking Luffy. They reveal that the Straw Hat Pirates are behind the assassination attempt and are trying to arrest Luffy. After much fighting with Luffy not fighting back, Frankie gets tired of everyone ignoring him and unleashes his ultimate attack, Coup de Vent, to destroy the entire dock. This Luffy and Nami take this chance to escape, and Luffy decides to see if Iceberg was telling the truth about Robin being his attacker. Meanwhile, the galley lay workers search through the town for the other crewmates, and the Iceberg statement is printed in all of the newspapers at the company's headquarters. And where Iceberg lives, Luffy breaks in and rushes around the building looking for the mayor's room, avoiding the attacks of the shipwrights there. Iceberg hears about this and has Khalifa lead Luffy to his room. When the two meet, Iceberg confirms that he really saw Nico Robin, and then pulls out a gun, requesting that Luffy let him see her. Luffy says that he has no idea where she is, and Iceberg shoots, attracting the attention of the other workers, so Luffy manages to escape before they get there. Meanwhile, Chopper and Sanji find Robin. Robin explains that there is a darkness in her heart that will engulf the rest of the crew if she stays any longer, and declares that she is leaving. Sanji tells Chopper to go back and tell everyone what happened, but he has something else he needs to do. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Chopper gather together and reach the conclusion that Robin may be being forced to do everything by the man in the mask, but Zoro points out that it would not be good to have false hope. Either way, they conclude that there will be another attack that night and they should confront her there. Meanwhile, Frankie decides to bring Luffy out of hiding by kidnapping Usopp and stealing the ship. In the galley lay headquarters, Iceberg calls Polly into his room to tell him something, and afterwards, Polly leaves his guard post to go into another room, opening a hidden safe. The four remaining Straw Hats gather outside of headquarters, hiding in a tree, observing the building for any events out of the ordinary when there is a huge explosion. At that point, several masked men in costumes, including Robin, rush into the building, who the workers assume are Straw Hat Pirates. Nami, Chopper, and Zoro decide to break in too, only to find that Luffy is gone. While the female assassin distracts the guard, showing incredible speed and the ability to jump while airborne, the man with Robin, wearing a bear mask, manages to enter Iceberg's room from the side using his Dayu no Mai. He shoots Iceberg to weaken him, stating that they cannot kill him until they get the signal, and leaves him to Robin while he handles the guards. The bare masked man easily takes care of the four-men tilestone, demonstrating an ability to make his body as hard as metal. At this point, Iceberg reveals the identities of the attackers. They are the government agency Cipher Pole 9, who intentionally failed in the first assassination attempt in order to place the blame on the Straw Hats, and they are after the blueprints for the ancient weapon Pluton, Shrika's Pansting, which Iceberg owns through inheritance from the great shipwright Tom. Meanwhile, Zoro, Nami, and Chopper break into the building, thinking that Luffy would have distracted all of the guards by aimlessly rushing in, only to find themselves surrounded. As it turns out, Luffy got stuck between two buildings. Meanwhile, Polly pulls blueprints out of Iceberg's safe only to encounter two men in a bull and skull mask. Polly attacks them only to be beaten easily, but as it turns out, the blueprints are fake. Using Den Den Mooshes, the other CP9 agents are alerted to gather in Iceberg's room. In Iceberg's room, the four CP9 agents reveal their identities. The foremen Lucci and Keiku, the secretary Khalifa, and the bar owner Blueno. At this time, however, Luffy manages to get free and breaks into the room only to be caught off guard by the powers of CP9, which include the ability to fire an air blade from their legs. Luffy and Polly are pinned to the ground, but after talking for a bit, Luffy manages to squeeze himself out and release Polly. Iceberg refuses to cooperate with the CP9 Lucci, who, as it turns out, can speak normally, asks Kaku to check Iceberg's pulse to gauge his reaction to his theory. Lucci gives his theory as to what happened to the Pluton blueprints. It was assumed that Iceberg was the last apprentice of the shipwright Tom and inherited the blueprints as a result, since reports said that his other apprentice, Cutty Flam, died when he was run over by the sea train. However, Cutty Flam is not actually dead. He continues to live in the city to this very day under the name Frankie. When he hears this, Iceberg's pulse greatly quickens and Lucci concludes that he was right. Just as CP9 is about to leave to go after Frankie, Luffy, Polly, Zoro, Chopper, and Nami break into the room. When Polly finds out the situation, he attacks Lucci only to be beaten easily. The Kai reveals that all CP9 agents are capable of using Rokushiki, the 6 martial art techniques to put them beyond any other human. The Straw Hats try to talk to Robin, but she leaves stating that there's a wish she cannot accomplish when with them. As it turns out, CP9 had set a firebomb in the building to go off soon, but before that Lucci decides to show off his devil fruit power. The Neko Neko no Mai model let Luffy and Zoro attack him, only to be thrown across the island, and the building is engulfed in flames, with Iceberg and Polly tied up unconscious, Nami thrown outside, and Chopper buried under rubble inside. At this point, the 4 CP9 agents leave and come across several Frankie family members who are yelling around town that they have Usopp and the ship captive, and that Luffy has to go to the workplace under the bridge if he wants to see them again. Lucy beats them up to find an exact location, and the agents head for Frankie's hiding place. Meanwhile, at Frankie's hideout, Usopp continues to fix the ship while Frankie and his assistants, the Square Sisters, cry from his story. When Frankie asks what Usopp plans on doing once he fixes his ship, he replies that he's going back to Syrup Village in East Blue after adventuring for a bit longer. Frankie tells him that he cannot let him do that, since the ship will not even reach the next island. Nonetheless, go back to East Blue and suggests letting him dismantle it. After arguing, Frankie throws Usopp into the water under the ship so he can see for himself that the ship is too damaged to go anywhere. Even after resurfacing, Usopp continues fixing the ship and reveals that he already knew the ship was doomed. He tells them that in Skypiea, the night after the ship was heavily damaged by Priest Shura, Usopp saw a strange figure in the fog fixing it, telling Usopp, "Don't worry, I'll carry everyone a little longer." The next day, though crudely done, the ship was fixed and back in its original form without the upgrades made by the Sariyama Alliance. Not only was it odd that someone would be there to help them, but that they would know what the ship originally looked like, which led Usopp into thinking that the figure was the Going Merry's soul. Frankie confirms this suspicion, telling Usopp about the Klabauterman, a ship spirit that appears to warn and even save crew members when the ship is near destruction, and only appears if the ship loves the crew it carries. Frankie points out that if Usopp traveled on the ship and ended up dying when it fell apart, the Going Merry's soul would not be able to live with itself, but Usopp asks Frankie if he should just leave behind a friend when he is about to die. Before this discussion can go on much longer, the 4 CP9 members break in, knocking out the Square Sisters. Frankie recognizes them as being from the Galilei Company and attacks them, asking them what they think they are doing there. Lucci reveals to him that they are from the government, and they know he is really Cutty Flam, also claiming that they killed Iceberg. The cyborg is then knocked through a wall, revealing a dusty workshop, the place where Tom's workers operated, and the CP9 decide to look through it in search of the Pluton blueprints, tearing the room apart, but Frankie tells them to get out of there. Living with Prime's Frankie's past, 22 years ago. A young Frankie sails his newest ship only to be attacked by a Sea King, and his new weapons are ineffective against it. When he comes back onto shore, a young Iceberg scorns him for constantly making weapons as their mentor. A pufferfish man named Tom finishes up on a ship by tossing it into the air and throwing the masts in with great accuracy. As they, along with Yokozuna the frog, eat food made by Kokoro, she explains how the island is not getting any business, and when they do, the shipbuilding companies fight each other over customers. And with the water level steadily rising, all anyone can do is wait for the city to sink. That night, however, Tom works on his plan to fix this problem. Later, after the execution of Goldie Roger, a judiciary ship arrives in the town to put Tom on trial. They are arresting anyone who helped the late pirate king, and Tom was the one who built his ship, the Oro Jackson. Tom is about to be sentenced to be executed at Enies lobby, until he reveals his plans. He will build a sea train that can travel in any weather to connect the nearby islands together. After the judge requests a route to Enies lobby, he gives Tom 10 years to make the sea train before his trial is redone. Though Frankie is angry that Tom would be arrested for making such a great ship that reached the end of the Grand Line in the first place, Tom's workers immediately gets to work. After 10 years, the Puffing Tom makes its first successful launch. Government agents, led by the leader of Cypher Pole 5, Spandam, arrive at where Tom and Iceberg are, only to be shot by Frankie's cannons. Spandam ignored as Frankie exclaims that he finally made a ship strong enough to defeat a Sea King, but is once again yelled at by Iceberg, explaining that he cannot just leave such powerful weapons lying around. Spandam manages to get their attention again and talks with Tom personally. Spandam explains that he is after the blueprints for the Pluton, though Tom denies having them. The CP5 leader then threatens to reveal that Tom built Goldie, Roger's ship, if he does not reveal where the plans are, only to be dumbfounded when Tom points out that everyone already knows that. After the agents leave, Tom takes the blueprints out of a safe and entrusts them to Iceberg and Frankie. Frankie suggests that they try to build it but is yelled at by Iceberg once again. Meanwhile, at a bar, Spandam laments that it is just not right for the builder of the Pirate King's ship to go free. The next day, the judiciary ship comes back to give Tom a retrial, and everyone is sure that Tom will go free this time until the ship is attacked. As Frankie watches in horror, the attacking ships turn out to be his own creations. And after the judiciary ship sinks, Spandam orders the agents controlling the ships to return and jump off the ship. Tom and Iceberg board the ships once they stop attacking, only to find that there is no one there and are shot by some more ships. Frankie arrives to find them badly wounded, and the three are arrested by CP5. At the trial, Spandam claims that he was the one who saved everyone, and no one believes Frankie when he declares that Spandam was the one who attacked in the first place. It is pointed out by the CP5 leader that the ships were made by their company, but Frankie declares that no ship that hurts his friends like that is any ship of his, which Tom responds to by breaking out of his manacles and punching his apprentice for the first time. The fishman declares that no matter what a ship does, even if it ends up bringing about the end of the world, the creator must love it with all of his heart. He then runs up and attacks Spandam too, only to be shot by tranquilizers. Since the creation of the sea train nullifies one crime, Tom requests that this one be erased, making it so that he will be executed for building the Oro Jackson, but Frankie and Iceberg are now safe. Frankie and Iceberg are released, and the first thing Frankie does is take a tranquilizer gun from a nearby soldier and smashes in Spandam's face with it. Frankie then runs away as the soldiers attack him. Tom is taken onto the sea train, which is leaving for Enies lobby, and Frankie takes one of his boats farther down the track. As he stands on the track with Yokozuna watching, he fires cannons at the train, but it will not stop. He then tries to stop it with his bare hands, only to get run over, supposedly getting killed. As Frankie and Usopp are restrained by CP9, Frankie is told that their commander would like to talk with him. As it turns out, the leader of CP9 is Spandam, who now has to wear a leather mask to cover his wounds, and he states that he will make Frankie pay for what he did to him before. CP9 decide to arrest Usopp too, as even though he left the crew, he still claims to be a pirate. Kaku then notices that they still have not gotten rid of the ship and releases it into the storm of Aqua Laguna. Meanwhile, at the Galilei headquarters, Iceberg, who was saved by Chopper at the last minute inside the galley La headquarters, and Nami managed to regain consciousness, and Iceberg requests to the other carpenters that they speak alone. Iceberg then reveals that Robin told him that CP9 could call for an island-destroying fleet of battleships, known as the Buster Call, thanks to permission from Aokiji, and that they would use it on the Straw Hat Pirates if Robin did not help assassinate Iceberg and come with them to be executed at Enies' lobby. In other words, the goal she cannot reach when with the Straw Hats is for the 6 crew members, excluding herself, to leave the island safely. With the knowledge that Robin did not betray them, Nami rushes to wake up Chopper. Polly wakes up and tells the other shipwrights that the pirates were not the assassins, but lies that he did not see who the attackers really were and that Lucci, Kaku, and Khalifa were at home. Nami rushes to stop the sea train, led by Polly and several other galley workers, while Chopper and other workers search for Luffy and Zoro. At the Blue Station, the 4 CP9 agents, along with Corgi and their prisoners, board the sea train as Sanji observes the situation. Due to the severe weather conditions, the sea train is forced to depart from the station early. As the train starts to leave, Sanji sneaks on board, but Nami and the others get there just in time to see it leave. Thankfully, the carpenters find a note from Sanji that states that he's on the train along with a baby Den Den Mushi, so they can contact each other once he finds a Den Den Mushi on the train. Thus, Nami switches her priorities to finding a ship to chase after them, but Polly says it would be crazy to use a ship during Aqua Laguna. During this, Kokoro watches the ocean, noting that the distance the water drawback shows how strong the following waves will be during Aqua Laguna. This year, the water draws back an abnormally large distance, giving the appearance of the ocean drying up. At this point, Chimney notices something in the back alleys, and as Nami approaches them, she points out that Luffy is stuck between 2 of the buildings. Meanwhile, Chopper looks at the back alley too and sees Zoro stuck in a chimney. Both Nami and Chopper hop across the buildings to where each respective crewmate is, while Chopper tries to pull Zoro out of the chimney, handing Zoro his sword upon request. Nami yells to Luffy that Robin gave up her life so that they could escape the government's wrath. Luffy then pushes the buildings he was stuck between apart and Zoro slices in half. The building whose chimney he was stuck in just as the first wave of Aqua Laguna crashes towards them. They just barely manage to reach higher ground only to underestimate the strength of the waves, and are engulfed. Thankfully, Polly was close by and manages to pull them up, but it is still not over as they have to quickly reach even higher ground before they are caught again. They succeed and the 2 crewmates are told about the situation. Meanwhile, on Puffing Tom, Sanji tries to decide the best course of action when he is found by an agent. He kicks the agent through the cart, drawing the attention of everyone there. One of them suggests alerting CP9, but the CP6 agent, Jerry, a very tall man that needs to bend over to fit in a cart, says that there's no need to do that. He tries to fight Sanji only to be beaten without any effort. In the car where CP9 is staying, Corgi explains that in the 5th car is the Marine Captain T-Bone, in the 4th ones of CP7. And finally in the 3rd, the newest member of CP9, Nero, making it so that there is no chance of any attackers reaching them. Back at Water 7, Luffy decides that they are going to take a ship to chase after Robin, but Polly points out it is useless, since no ship can get past a normal Aqua Laguna. And this year's is far beyond average. At this point, Kokoro says that if any ship could get past this, it would be the sea train, and tells the Straw Hats to follow her. She takes them to an old cellar where the prototype sea train, Rocketman, was kept, and they find Iceberg finishing up on maintenance. He had the same idea as Kokoro and came to the warehouse earlier to get it ready, and the train is ready for departure. Luffy and Zoro manage to fully recover by eating a bunch of meat and steak brought by Nami and a pair of conductors. Before they can leave, the Frankie family appears before them. They tearfully request to Luffy that they come with them to Enies' lobby so they can rescue Frankie, and Luffy lets the group join them. As Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Chopper get on board, with Kokoro conducting, the train launches out of one of the gates in the city straight into Aqua Laguna. As the train launches out of the city, the Frankie family attaches their cart to the train, bringing along their King Bull Sodom and Gamora, and Kokoro steers the ship onto the tracks, greatly boosting its speed. Being a prototype, Rocketman's speed cannot be controlled, and once it gets on the tracks, it is almost impossible to steer. As it turns out, Chimney, Gonby, Polly, Tilestone, and Lulu stowed on board. After Polly tells the other 2 foremen the identities of the assassins, he reveals that he came along to avenge Iceberg, since they share a common enemy. The Straw Hat Pirates, Galilei Company, and Frankie family officially form an alliance. Meanwhile, on the Puffing Tom, Sanji breaches the next car, which is where Usopp and Frankie are being kept. After being convinced that Frankie is good by Usopp P, Sanji reluctantly frees both of them, and they climb on top of the next car, where Captain T-Bone is stationed. Using a Den Mushi from the previous car, he calls Nami and is told about Robin's situation. Back at the Rocketman, a huge wave is coming towards them, and despite the best efforts of the Frankie family and the galley lay foreman, they cannot break it apart. At this point, Luffy and Zoro make their move by performing their ultimate combo attack, Gomu Gomu no Sanbyaku Pound Cannon, and blast a huge tunnel through the wave, saving the train. Though Frankie decides to help rescue Robin, Usopp refuses to, citing that he is no longer a member of the crew and walks away. Minutes later, however, a masked man in a cape who looks exactly like Usopp, calling himself Sogeking, appears before them and says that Usopp told him about the entire situation and that he is willing to help. Sanji and Frankie see right through his disguise, but decide not to say anything. As Captain T-Bone, a zombie-like but honorable knight swordsman, and his soldiers look through the last two cars, the three intruders detach them from the rest of the train, leaving very few people left. They enter the next car, which holds the kitchen, and encounter the CP7 Chef Wands, a very odd-looking and energetic man that makes ramen with his nose hairs and fights using ramen kenpo. Sanji holds him off as Frankie and Sogi can continue to the next car. Sanji battles Wands and Frankie faces off with Nero as Sogeking continues on to Robin's car by using Suction Octopi to walk along the side of the train. He tells Robin about the situation, but she still refuses to be saved. When Corgi comes in to see the source of the noise, Sogeking hides under Robin's cloak. In the kitchen, Wands proves to be very weak, but Sanji cannot hurt him with his kicks, since his feet will get stuck in his ramen armor. The Straw Hat Cook manages to bypass this, however, by using knives to cut the armor apart, stating that he's in a kitchen and he's cutting up food, so he can ignore his legs-only rule in this case. After a while, Rocketman approaches the detached cars and, after Luffy makes sure Sanji and the others aren't not on it, Zoro cuts it in half to get it off the tracks. Soon afterwards, they come across Captain T-Bone, who ran on ahead on the sea train tracks in a desperate attempt to stop the intruders. T-Bone fires projectile slashes towards Zoro, but he manages to dodge them and knocks T-Bone off the tracks. On the top of Car 3, Frankie is overwhelmed by Nero's speed, especially once he discovers that his back is his weak point, but through trickery Frankie manages to pin him down. As the cyborg punches Nero through the roof, Sanji kicks Wands through several cars until he lands right next to the CPN agents. In Robin's car, Corgi finds Sogeking, but he is shot by one of his gunpowder stars. Despite Sogeking trying to stop her, Robin goes into the car where CP9, Sanji, and Frankie are. She once again denies their help, even going as far as attacking the Sniper King. But he throws a smoke bomb, and the four criminals escape to the last car, detaching it from CP9's car. However, Khalifa manages to grab onto the car with her whip, and it is pulled in by Blueno. Frankie sacrifices himself by breaking down the wall being held by Blueno and falling back into their car. But this is futile as Blueno teleports to the separated car with an air door using his devil fruit power. He attacks Sanji and Usopp, but Robin has him stop on the condition that she willingly goes with him. Before Sanji can counterattack, Blueno and Robin go into the air door back to the sea train. Talking to Robin, Frankie learns that Iceberg is still alive and then informs her that no matter what anyone says, simply being alive is not a sin. Puffing Tom then arrives at the no-night government island of Enies lobby. Yokozuna the Frog appears on the tracks to test his strength against Rocketman, and the impact separates the Frankie family's car from the train and knocks the train off the tracks. After landing on the train, Kokoro calls the Frog over and he is extremely happy to see her, since he thought she was kidnapped by the government. Somehow managing to talk to the Frog, Kokoro finds out that he was attacking the sea train, so he could become stronger, and so he will be able to stop his friends from being taken away again. She informs him that Frankie was taken just like Tom was, and Yokozuna decides to accompany them to Enies lobby. Meanwhile, the Frankie family come across the cars Sanji and Sogeking were in and the two board theirs. As the sky starts to turn blue again, Enies lobby comes in sight. United with Sanji, and Sogeking stop shortly thereafter on the Rocketman. The Straw Hats, along with the Frankie family and Galley Lee, began an all-out assault on the government island of Enies lobby against thousands of marine soldiers and the Cypher Pole agents in a last-ditch effort to rescue their friends Nico, Robin, and Frankie before they are dragged through the gates of justice. The massive doors are the only thing standing between Robin and Frankie and their respective destinations: Marine headquarters and the terrifying prison of Impel Down. While the others battled with the giants Oemo and Kashi, dog-riding guards, monstrous jurors, and a three-headed judge, Luffy rushes ahead and engages the numerous Marines and agents on the island. In spite of their numbers and numerous wrong turns, he overpowers them and eventually reaches the roof of the courthouse. Meanwhile, Spandam gloats with overconfidence until a Marine finally reports in that casualties are mounting at a horrendous rate, over 2,000 so far, with Luffy himself responsible. Furthermore, thanks to his previous contact with Dory and Groggy, Soga King was able to convince Oemo and Kashi to defect. For the first time, Spandam starts to panic. On the courthouse roof, Luffy encounters CP9 agent Blue No. Unlike last time, Luffy is able to keep track and match his skill. Then Luffy reveals his new Gear 2 ability, which allows him to imitate the technique Zoro to great effect, enhances his body to withstand the strain while using it, and allows him to overpower Blueno's strongest Tekkai technique, ultimately knocking him. Frankie used his coup de bout to free himself from his chains, taking Robin with him. Luffy called out to Robin and told her that he was coming for her. She replied that she didn't want to be saved and that she just wanted to die. Robin's past is finally revealed, as well as her last reason for being unwilling to return to the crew. Having been betrayed so many times in the past, she's terrified that one day the Straw Hats will see her as a burden and also betray her. The other Straw Hats quietly acknowledged the reason Robin had, then Spandam burst out laughing, saying she's absolutely accurate, and nobody would be stupid enough to think she wasn't a burden after traveling with her. Spandam pointed at the flag on top of the Tower of Justice and told Luffy that the organization after Robin is over 170 affiliated nations. Luffy acknowledged this, then told Saga King to shoot down the flag. Saga King Hat Pirates had just declared war on the world government. Unable to doubt her friends any longer after seeing them declare, is terrified. However, Judge Baskerville ordered the personnel to fire the mortar cannon to forcibly stop the drawbridge. The mortar cannon fired, stopping the drawbridge, and Spandam started to drag Robin. Thought there should not exist a weapon like this without having a weapon against it in the case of it falling into the hands of someone like Spandam, because he figured this was the only way to satisfy the wish of the architect. Fruit abilities for the first time. Meanwhile, Soga King tried to steal the key from the sleeping Jabra without a fight. Before he came to making noise that woke Jabra up, he recognized Soga as a pirate and attacks him, form rather than the hybrid. Jabra finds Kaku's new appearance very funny indeed, and they get into an argument until Zoro changed into his hybrid form, but his appearance makes Zoro lose his focus, annoyed that everybody is laughing at him, lost his temper and cut the tower in half with his Rankiak, a main Daishi. Zoro and Saga King avoid the attack but find themselves accidentally locked together by the ceased in handcuffs. Since Keiko and Jabra cannot decide who gets to kill their opponents while they are handcuffed together, they offered to unlock the two to avoid getting into another argument. Sadly, neither of them had the correctly numbered key, with Kaku having number 5 and Jabra having number 1, so they resigned themselves to fighting both of them. Meanwhile, Chopper managed to find the room where Zoro and Soga King are fighting. They tell Chopper that he must find one of the other CP9 members and get the number 2 key. Chopper ran off, hoping that Sanji will have the right key. In the dungeon, Kumadori has Nami trapped with his hair attacks, giving her no opportunity to use her climb attack. Frankie, low on cola and thus unable to use any special attacks, is forced to box with Fukuru. They compared the strength of their punches and find themselves evenly matched in strength and toughness. After 3 cups of tea, Sanji came to his senses and demanded Khalifa's key. She took advantage of his reluctance to hurt women and kicked him across the room. Finally, Luffy reached the bottom of the judicial tower, where he can see gates is a giant whirlpool. Nami is nearly killed by Kumadori before Chopper attacked him to rescue her, and she escaped having stolen Kumadori's key. Sanji suddenly fell from an upper story, his body terribly wounded and deformed by some unknown power into a doll-like figure. He explained his plight to Nami, who gently chastised him for his foolishness before advancing to face Khalifa herself. At the gates of justice, Luffy nearly drowned trying to cross the ocean by himself, but is rescued by Gonbei and Chimney, who led him to a secret passage that Spandam had used earlier. It led to the lower areas of the tower and eventually to an immovable steel door. He broke through it with his new Gear 3. The attack was not shown, but afterwards his body is briefly shrunk to child size. Luffy returned to normal as he pursued Lucci and Spandam. Lucci informed his commander that they are being followed, and Spandam ordered him to wait behind to hold off any pursuit while he takes Robin to the gates of justice. Meanwhile, Frankie and Fukuru's battle continued into the kitchen, each one trying to punch harder than the other. As the two swapped blows and taunts, Frankie began to flag due to lack of cola, but their fight was interrupted by Kumadori and Chopper, who burst in through one wall. Chopper's first rumble ball has worn off, so he stalled Kumadori by locking him in an enormous fridge. He joined forces with Frankie, and after accidentally giving the cyborg the wrong drink several times, Chopper gave Frankie a full cola refill. Frankie, a supercharged, punched Fukuru out of the building, and their fight continued outside, taking them down into the ocean and then high above the tower, where Frankie ended the fight with his coup de vent cannon. Frankie then grabs the number 4 key off of Fukuru's coat pocket. Zoro and Usopp are still handcuffed together and running from Kaku and Jabra as best they can. The two agents manage to get into another argument in the process, giving Zoro and Usopp a chance to form a plan. If Zoro cannot hold a sword with Usopp on his arm, Usopp must succumb his sword and be used as a weapon instead. Usopp reluctantly agreed. Back in the kitchen, Kumadori escaped from the fridge by eating his way out and confronted Chopper, who is forced to eat another rumble ball in the hope of beating this powerful enemy. However, eating 2 rumble balls in such a short time made his transformations random and erratic, leaving him open to attacks. In the end, even his strongest attack could not defeat Kumadori, and he fell badly wounded. In the moment before Kumadori finished him, he remembered the last time he took 3 rumble balls in a row, and how he woke up to hear that a monster had destroyed much of his village. His mentor, Dr. Kirei, had told him that the monster had been him and made him promise to never do it again. With an apology to Kirei and hoping that his friends aren't nearby, he took a 3rd rumble ball and grew into a gigantic, terrifying monster that dwarfs Kumadori. He crushed the CP9 agent and threw him from the Tower of Justice to the main island. In Khalifa's room, Nami's battle seemed to have ended prematurely. She lay paralyzed on the floor as Khalifa calmly took a bath. Nami, recovering her strength, tried to attack the CP9 agent, who defended herself with her newfound devil fruit powers. She is revealed to have eaten the Awa Awa no Mi, which allows her to create bubbles which can weaken enemies, hardened in soap for defense, inking or transmute an enemy's body entirely, as in the case of Sanji. Having worked this out, Nami continued to fight, but is soon weakened by Khalifa's bubbles. Down in the basement, Luffy finally caught up to Lucci, who held him at bay while Spandam escaped towards the gates of justice with Robin. When Robin tried to escape, Spandam attempted to summon CP9 with his ordinary Den Den Mushi, but used the golden Den Den Mushi by mistake, which summons the Buster Call, a powerful marine fleet with orders to destroy the entire island. Realizing his mistake, Spandam contacted all the Marines stationed on the island, ordering them to report in. Meanwhile, Marine Headquarters receives the Buster Call signal on the Silver Den Den Mushi. Noting the target to be Enies lobby, they decide to launch the fleet straight from headquarters, so as to reach there within 30 minutes. Spandam, at first panicking and not realizing that he is still on air, started to gloat that the lives of the Marines do not matter as long as he can bring Robin alive to the gates of justice. Robin cut in on his broadcast with a warning to the Marines. Understandably alarmed, the listening Marines evacuated the island, leaving the Frankie family and Galila workers behind as prisoners. Hearing Robin's warning, Luffy tried to force his way past Lucci to reach her, but Lucci fought back fiercely and stopped him in his tracks, forcing him to continue the fight. Jabra and Kaku decided to end their fight with Zoro and Usopp quickly in order to escape the approaching bombardment. In Khalifa's room, Nami struggled against the superior skill and powers of her opponent, who began to transmute Nami's body just like she did with Sanji. Before she can finish Nami off, however, Chopper broke into the room, still in monstrous form and totally out of control. The giant Chopper attacked Nami wildly, uprooting Khalifa's bath in the process. He threw it down the stairs to where Sanji lay unconscious below, drenching the whole area with water before storming off. The water from the bath washed away Khalifa's weakening bubbles. A splash on Nami's leg let her realize how to restore herself using rain tempo. She then used Mirage Tempo to confuse Khalifa before eventually defeating her with a Thunder Lance Tempo and taking her key. Meanwhile, Chopper wandered into Zoro and Sogeking's fight, and Zoro fought to protect him from Jabra and Kaku. Frankie arrived and decided that the only way to stop Chopper is to knock him into the ocean to cancel his devil fruit powers. He blew Chopper out of the tower with his coup de vent, then jumped in after to save him. Nami unlocked Zoro and Sogeking's handcuffs, allowing the real fight against Jabra and Kaku to begin. Robin tried to escape from Spandam, but he stopped her by attacking with Funk Freed. With Chopper back to normal, safe, and out of the water, Frankie remembered that Nami told him to head towards the gates of justice to try Fukuru and Kumadori's keys on Robin's handcuffs, so Chimney and Gombe showed him the way. Zoro began to once again battle Kaku. Kaku revealed more impressive abilities through the use of his devil fruit, using his nose as a larger version of Shigen. The deflected blow easily cut into a boulder nearby. Jabra caught Usopp off guard by offering him the key without a fight, but attacked Usopp at the last moment, knocking him down. With his opponent helpless, Jabra began to gloat at Usopp's weakness, but is cut short by the sudden arrival of Sanji, returned to his normal self by the falling water from Khalifa's bath. He distracted Jabra and told the wounded Usopp to help any way he can. Outside, the sea train departed, filled to capacity with escaping Marines. Meanwhile, Polly, who used his rope skills to pretend he was bound, managed to untie the other captives, and they tried to find an alternative way off the island. Fighting Sanji on the tower's high landing, Jabra revealed his Tekkai Kimpo, a fighting style which allows him to move and fight while using Tekkai, making him all but immune to Sanji's kicks. Suddenly, Jabra stopped the fight, tearfully offering Sanji his key and telling him that Robin is really his long-lost sister. Sanji ignored the deception and continued the fight. Meanwhile, Usopp, high above on the tower, came up with a plan to combat Jabra's impenetrable Tekkai. Sanji creates a new technique, Diable Jam, where he heats up one foot with friction, resulting in powerful kicks that burn through his enemy's defense. He kicked Jabra all the way down to the ground floor, defeating him. Meanwhile, Spandam dragged Nico Robin across the Bridge of Hesitation, a long bridge that leads to the Gates of Justice. Frankie caught up to Luffy and Lucci and asks Luffy if he needed help. Luffy snapped at him, telling not to interfere. He told Frankie to take the keys and head to where Robin is, behind the door Lucci is guarding. Zoro and Kaku continued their duel, with Kaku using his devil fruit power to gain the upper hand, wounding Zoro with a rain of Rankyaku attacks. Zoro stalled Kaku by mocking his voice, angry now, and experimenting wildly with his transformations. Kaku changed to a more powerful form, which removes his long neck while lengthening his arms and legs. Combined with larger swords he retrieved, Kaku gained the upper hand and mocked Zoro's attempt to rescue Robin. This angered Zoro, prompting him to unleash a new mysterious technique, Nine Sword style, which made him appear like an Asura deity. 3 faces plus 6 arms meant 9 swords total. Realizing the danger, Kaku prepared his finishing blow, the powerful Rankyaku attack that sliced the tower in half, Ichibugin, which was so powerful it negated Kaku's Rankyaku and finally incapacitated the CP9 agent. In the end, Zoro delivers Polly's message of termination, and the downed Kaku freely gave Zoro his key and even shared a joke with the man who defeated him. At this moment, Sanji catches up to Zoro and learns the last key is now theirs. Robin admitted she is afraid of death and tried to escape, even biting down on the bridge to stall for time. At the same time, she insisted in her mind that the crew will be coming to save her. Luffy is unable to hurt Lucci, who hit him with a rapid-fire Shigen. Frankie comes to Luffy's aid by trying to hit Lucci with the same move he used against Fukuru. Frankie's move is unsuccessful against Lucci's much stronger Tekkai, and Lucci prepared to strike Frankie. Luffy used his Gear 2 ability and knocked Lucci away. Frankie was astonished by Luffy's strength and power and encouraged him to defeat Lucci. Luffy manages to keep the now transformed Lucci at bay and allowed Frankie to leave the room to chase after Spandam and Robin. On the bridge, Spandam dragged Robin by a rope, gloating that no one will ever reach her because he set up landmines behind them. He then explained that his father, Spandine, was the one who led the destruction of Ohara, which infuriated Robin. There is an explosion as Frankie triggered the landmines and is blown into the water, and Spandam laughed that no one will save Robin. Spandam is suddenly hit in the head by a missile, and the Marines waiting to transport the prisoner are also attacked. King had fired the shots from the top of the Tower of Justice, a distance that none of the Marines could hit with any weapon and none could see without binoculars. Robin escaped and the Marines fired at her, but Frankie jumped in the way to block the bullets. The landmines had only delayed him. Ging shot Zoro and Sanji's keys to Frankie, leaving him with all of the keys to use on Robin's cuffs. The number 5 key was the right. Spandam is shocked that CP9 was defeated. With all the keys in hand, Frankie eventually unlocks Robin's sea-stone cuffs. Robin thanks King, but he replied that she should save the thanks until later. King also tells Robin that she is now free to do whatever she wants, and Robin made her decision. Using her devil fruit abilities, she attacked Spandam. The celebration is cut short when the Buster Call arrived, and the top of the judicial tower is blown up. The defensive fence surrounding Enies' lobby is also destroyed. Frankie shouted out that this is their last chance to escape, as there is an escort ship at the end of the bridge. In the tunnels beneath the towers, Nami, Kokoro carrying Chopper on her head, Chimney and Gombi continued their escape. The battle with Luffy and Lucci raged on. Luffy is able to land an attack on Lucci, who is forced back with pain. Lucci then explained to Luffy that his Gear 2 ability is wearing his body away and shortening his lifespan by pumping blood into his legs, causing his blood flow to speed up. Luffy yelled back that he does not care and wishes to save his comrades first. So Lucci raised the stakes and used a Rankiyaku to smash a wall, causing water to flow into the tower and the tunnel system below. Anyone in it, any of Luffy's comrades trying to catch up to him, will drown. Spandam ordered the Marines to take back Robin, but the Marines stopped as they see the Buster Call approaching. The Buster Call is now upon Enies' lobby and is about to destroy everything. The fleet appears along with the 5 vice admirals. The Buster Call Marines explain that they can destroy everything but the bridge on Enies' lobby because Robin is standing there, although Spandam thinks it is because of his presence. It is revealed that during the last Buster Call, everything on Ohara was destroyed except for the ground where Spandine was standing. The Frankie family continued to rush to the gates of justice. Meanwhile, Sogik, blown off from the attack on the tower, falls to where Sanji and Zoro are located. They tried to get King to leave, but he is slowed by injuries. He tried to explain the properties of Kabuto, but is cut off by Sanji. Nami, Chopper, Kokoro, Chimney, and Ganbei are under the room where Lucci and Luffy are fighting, which is also filling up with water. Having exhausted himself, Luffy is attacked fiercely by Lucci, who taunted that he thought Luffy was stronger. So Luffy unleashes Gear 3, briefly explaining how it works. His arm then swelled to massive proportions, and he attacked Lucci with a Gomu Gomu no gigant pistol, sending him flying through the wall and toward the sea. A Marine asked Vice Admiral Doberman how to handle the capture of Nico Robin. The Vice Admiral ordered him to ignore her and began to explain about Lucci's past. 15 years ago, an incident happened where 500 soldiers were captured on an island by pirates. The pirates' captain wanted to become the king of the island in return for sparing the soldiers' lives. Just as the island was about to fall, the world government sent a boy to the island. The boy infiltrated the pirates' hideout and killed the 500 soldiers on the spot. The pirates, infuriated, began to shoot at the boy. The boy emerged from the explosions, killed the pirates' captain, and ended the incident. That boy, at the age of 13, became a member of CP9 and has become the strongest killing machine since CP9's inception. The Marines, upon hearing the story, became frightened. The Vice Admiral tells the Marines that as long as that man is here assisting in the recapture of Nico Robin, they do not need to act and will do nothing until all but the Bridge of Hesitation is destroyed. In the tunnels, Zoro, Sanji, and Sogik heard the sound of water and see Nami, Kokoro, with Chopper on her hat, Chimney, and Gombi running away from the rushing water. The water began to fill up the passage, engulfing them all. Lucci, after receiving a Gear 3 attack, is knocked out and landed on one of the Marine ships. After recovering, Lucci returns to human form and takes off his shirt, showing scars on his back similar to the world government's symbol. Luffy inhaled deeply and then attacked the ship. The Marines fired at him, but Luffy was unaffected. Luffy resumed his fight with Lucci, attacking with a Gomu Gomu no gigant axe, but Lucci managed to dodge it. He turned into his complete animal form and bit Luffy. Luffy escaped by expanding his body, while Lucci returned to his human form. Luffy tried to hit Lucci with a Gomu Gomu no gigant whip, but Lucci dodged it as the attack destroyed the mast of the ship. Lucci fired a Tobushigen Beishi and hit Luffy and deduced that Luffy's speed decreases as his strength increases. The ship starts to split, while Lucci laughed boldly. Vice Admiral Onigumo noted Lucci and Luffy fighting and ordered the fleet to target the ship they are on. He explained that if it's Lucci, then he will survive. A Marine objected to the idea, saying that 1,000 Marines are aboard the ship. The Vice Admiral killed the Marine on the spot, asking if he can protect the future from a criminal with his weakness. The ships begin firing, and the ship that Luffy and Lucci is on is hit. Luffy escaped the bombardment, returning to the tower. However, when he lands, he is shrunk from the side effects of Gear 3. He then hid from Lucci until he could return to normal size. Spandam mocked the pirate, thinking Luffy died in the attack, and continued to brag about the Buster Call until Frankie punched him in the face. Angry, Spandam tried to attack Robin with Funkfried in elephant form, but is stopped by Frankie, who threw the animal back right on top of Spandam. Lucci found Luffy and began to attack him. However, right before Lucci could strike the finishing blow, the damage from the Gear 3 attack starts to hurt. As he struggled with the pain, Luffy returned to normal. In the tunnels, Zoro and the others slowly drown. As they neared death, Kokoro saved them all by revealing her true identity as a mermaid. Robin and Frankie hijacked Spandam's escape ship, and Kokoro soon arrived, jumping into the ship with the unconscious Straw Hat crew. Robin and Frankie thank her as she changed back into a human and their friends woke up, but they realized they still need to wait for Luffy. Meanwhile, Oimo and Kashi, who had been carrying Zambai, Mazu, and Kiwi, the rest of the Frankie family, Polly, Lulu, Tylestone, Sodom, Gomorrah, and Yokozuna out of the path of the Buster Call, finally reached the exit of Enies lobby. However, they are attacked by 3 Buster Call ships. Hit by cried out for Luffy. Usopp encouraged Luffy to get up and to stop looking so defeated. Usopp tells Luffy that he came to save Robin, not to see Luffy being beaten up, and then challenged Lucci to a fight. Luffy stopped him, knowing that Usopp will be killed almost instantly. Now more determined than ever, Luffy got up again to fight. Despite being attacked again and again by Lucci, Luffy still fought back. Lucci hit Luffy with another Rokugan. But this time, Luffy does not fall, using everything he has left. Zoro threw Chopper, Robin, and Luffy onto the Going Merry before boarding herself. Spandam returned, broken and bruised from being hit with Funkfried, and orders the Marines to open fire on Mary, falsely claiming to have permission from Admiral Aokiji. 2 Buster Call ships fired, only to get caught up in a strong current and hit each other. Sanji, during his absence, had started to close the gates of justice, causing the whirlpool currents to return. As Nami used the current to elude the battleships, more shots are fired, which Zoro and Sanji deflected by using Luffy as a sling. Spandam yelled more orders, but Robin used her powers to break his spine. Finally, Frankie used the coup de vent to catapult ship and all out of danger. At the front of the island, the Frankie family galley lay giants, King Bulls, and Yokozuna commandeered the Puffing Tom and returned to Water 7. Aokiji arrived on the scene and declared that with the island in ruins, there is no way they can depict Enies lobby as anything but a complete defeat for the world government. The reunited Straw Hat Pirates leave the chaos of the Buster Call behind and sailed out of Enies lobby. Sometime later, they see a galley ship with Iceberg and his shipwrights in it. However, their joy is short-lived as Mary's hull finally gave out and splits in 2. Luffy pleaded with Iceberg to fix the ship up one last time, but Iceberg cannot. He'd already done what he could. As he saw the ship laying on Scrap Island after having been dumped from Frankie's lair by CP9, he too heard the voice of the ship and decided to grant its request to sail once again. The ship was then carried off by the waves of Aqua Laguna and sailed off on its own. He declared what he saw before him as a miracle, a ship so loved by its crew that it went beyond its limits to save them one last time. He praised ship and crew for such extraordinary loyalty. Luffy comes to realize what Iceberg is saying and understands what has to be done. After moving to Iceberg's ship, Luffy and the rest of his crew give Mary a Viking funeral, setting her ablaze for her final voyage. As the crew lament the funeral of their ship, they each hear the soul of Mary, thanking them for taking good care of her. Though Luffy argued that her damage was their fault, Mary says that she was happy, with her only regret that she could not continue their voyage with them. As the ship starts to burn away, the crew mourn their friend, as Mary once more thanks them for a wonderful life.
Bye.